Everything kicks off the day his high school suddenly bursts into flames, but even with the absolute chaos around him, he runs straight toward the art room. If his life is ending today, he wants to go down in his absolute favorite spot. Our guy has completely accepted his fate. He expects everything to end right there, but destiny has a pretty wild twist waiting. He wakes up, touches his head. Instantly, he knows exactly where he ended up. It has already been a whole week since he somehow crossed directly into the landscape painting he created. While carrying a simple straw basket, he worries if his students actually made it out of the fire safely. Suddenly, two massive ears pop out from the thick bushes. He never expected to run into a three-eyed rabbit, which just squeaks out a tiny, adorable little sound. Time is broken here. It moves in a totally unpredictable way inside this painting. Because of the weird flow, he cannot tell how long he has been staying here. Still, he managed to figure out a few basic rules about his new home. Rule 1 is simple. Everything he draws here physically comes to life. That is an incredibly broken power to have. To prove it, the fresh red apples he just sketched on the canvas suddenly start tumbling right out into the real world. Salt, pans, spatulas, or flowers. Everything he draws instantly comes to life. He is pretty thrilled to realize he will never have to spend a single penny on groceries again. But there is a pretty massive catch because this magic has absolutely zero effect on actual human beings. Sad news for us, because I was ready to send a waifu to everyone watching. When he tries to paint people, he only gets warm, lifeless bodies that cannot breathe. Still, he feels pretty relieved he did not get stuck with some terrifying power that would ruin his peaceful life. Rule number 2 is that he can actually interact with the outside world through a painting on a tree. Walking right out of his artwork, he discovers that 30 years have already flown by. While eating a simple piece of bread, he realizes the modern world has shifted into the terrifying year of cleansing. Regular humans somehow gained mysterious abilities. Crazy powers. These wild powers serve only one real purpose: to fight back against the monsters crawling out of dungeons. Watching all this absolute madness without a single clue is our guy, who just wants to paint in peace. Having zero desire to live in a dangerous world overrun by monsters, he decides to slide right back inside his canvas. Rule number 3 shows this painted forest has a totally unique ecosystem. Even though he only sketched one tiny cabin and a few trees, wild new plants have sprouted up everywhere. To make things even better, every single creature inside his painted world treats him with absolute kindness. Even the tiny birds land on his shoulder to sing happily, leaving him wondering if it is because he literally built this entire cozy forest. But it makes absolute sense that his own creations would be incredibly friendly to their creator. Then rule number 4 pops up alongside a familiar system screen, detailing the magical properties of the fruit he just picked. He jumps back. Seriously, he wishes these blue screens would give some warning first. He knows these exact screens only show up for the awakened hunters who survived the cataclysm. It is pretty fascinating to him that he somehow became an awakened hunter, almost like playing an actual RPG. His little world feels more like a cozy game about collecting ingredients and cooking simple meals. He has no idea if he will ever need it, but he still decides to craft some basic medicine from today's harvest. Imagining a free life without any stressful job, he clicks the screen to unlock new content. He has never felt happier, simply eating and resting without the crushing dread of a daily grind. For lunch today, he goes with delicious honey-glazed sweet potatoes. Since food never spoils inside this magic cabin, his pantry stays full forever. Now, his whole routine is just planning his next meal. Honestly, just eating and sleeping all day sounds like the absolute dream. He could never enjoy this level of comfort back when he was a stressed-out teacher. Staring at the portal painting on the tree, he realizes just how much he deeply loves his cozy new reality. Wait. A strange, echoing noise is coming directly from the entrance of the painting. Staring closely at the golden frame hanging on the tree trunk, the final rule of this magic world is about to drop. As crazy as it sounds, our guy has actually become the painting itself. His physical body has fully merged with the canvas, locking him in as a permanent resident. Suddenly, his eyes snap open. He senses a strange shift happening on the outside. A thick, mysterious dark smoke starts rapidly pouring out from inside Gio's portrait. The dark energy floods the ruined room with intense force. Our guy lets out a heavy sigh of relief as he finally manages to materialize back into the real world. Quietly, he peers down the pitch-black, silent school hallway with a lot of suspicion. He quietly wonders if that weird noise he heard earlier was just some wild animal passing through the ruins. Right after that, the dark smoke rushes back inside the golden frame. Behind the canvas, Gio strolls along humming a tune, carrying a basket packed with delicious food. He absolutely loved this quiet sanctuary, where he could cook up incredible meals every single day. Cooking kept him happy. He spent all his time enjoying his own amazing creations. Honestly, life here was so perfect that he really would not mind staying trapped inside this golden frame forever. In the real world, a few explorers discover the portrait and stand completely shocked that it survived the massive fire. Examining the canvas up close, they notice the flawless details and spot a title. Seeing the words Portrait of Geo, they praise their teammate, who has the appraisal skill. It is the only spotless thing left in this entire creepy, abandoned school, which means it has to be a special item. No doubt about it. They are completely sure this painting came from a dungeon. They wrap it up fast, already knowing that wealthy collectors will absolutely lose their minds to get their hands on it. One guy is practically dancing, dreaming about the crazy payday they are about to secure. But inside, pure peace. Geo is still fast asleep within his colorful world. And now watch the moment they move it. Things start getting weird. Suddenly, the portal at the entrance shifts, revealing a high-end, luxury theater packed shoulder to shoulder with wealthy people. A bright spotlight hits the canvas, now standing proud on a pedestal. The elite crowd in the massive auction hall stares at the artwork with immense curiosity. After some insanely fierce bidding, the rare masterpiece is sold and whisked away to a collector's private gallery. This secure vault is protected by heavy chains and glowing runes of ancient magic. A man wearing a white trench coat carries Geo's artwork down the quiet hall. He walks past a whole lineup of dangerous, cursed artifacts in his personal collection. Finally, the man steps into a massive, glowing hall to put his newest trophy on display. Flexing his flashy gold rings, he carefully reaches out to adjust the frame of Geo's portrait. Carefully, he hangs it up. The canvas is mounted in his grand gallery. Bisabeol, the elite S-rank collector and guildmaster, finds the piece completely mesmerizing. But moments before this, his loyal assistant had called him over to talk. The anxious assistant questions if they might be taking this obsessive item hunting a bit too far. Snapping right back, Bisabeol asks if he is telling a collector to stop collecting. Feeling deeply insulted, he says this comment is a massive slap in the face. His assistant complains about the fortune spent, but the master shrugs and says he buys whatever he wants. Then, Bisabeol proudly brags that even the mighty president of the Hunter Association wanted this exact piece. You see, all of this ties back to the devastating cataclysm that tore the world apart 30 years ago. Earth collided with other dimensions, spawning deadly dungeons and divine monsters. It was sheer chaos, leaving human civilization shattered and desperate to survive the horrific invasion. But a savior appeared, building the system to keep humanity from going extinct. That legendary, ultra-powerful figure is none other than the current association president, Dan Hyra. Although she has zero interest in collectibles, she bid an absolutely ridiculous fortune for this specific portrait. Hearing this, the bespectacled assistant is utterly stunned by the god-tier president's sudden interest in a painting. But here is the crazy part. Even with his elite skill, the master cannot read any info from it. The submissive assistant bows low, deeply apologizing for judging the art before realizing its incredible value. In a low, mysterious voice, the guildmaster admits that he has absolutely no clue what this painting actually is. The assistant freezes, wondering what kind of crazy joke this is. He reminds his boss that he climbed all the way to S rank, using only his appraisal skill. It makes zero sense that the leader of one of the 3 biggest guilds in the country is totally blind to this item. Cold sweat drips. The young man is terrified. He starts imagining what kind of danger this item could bring to the world. The master playfully jokes that flattery gets him nowhere, but the sweating assistant insists he is dead serious. With a dark, sinister grin, the guildmaster agrees that this art is more dangerous than anything else. Excited to his core, he admits that this danger makes him want the painting even more. Leaning in close to the canvas, the collector wonders who this boy in the portrait could actually be. He realizes that, whether it was made by human hands or not, the perfection of this art is completely mind-blowing. The master can actually feel a bizarre vibration humming from the canvas, as if a real person were trapped inside. He narrows his sharp eyes, desperately trying to spot some hidden secret in the artwork. Pulled into a strange vision, he stares into the pitch blackness, wondering where he even is. Suddenly, right in the middle of the dark, 2 massive glowing yellow eyes snap open. Then the vision shifts, revealing a deep, colorful backdrop that looks like the cosmos itself. Suddenly, all that wild, mysterious energy coming from the canvas finally settles down. Outside, the collector starts celebrating, thrilled to own an item his appraisal skills couldn't even measure. Grinning ear to ear, he's absolutely sure this thing is no ordinary art piece. Meanwhile, Geo watches in complete shock from the inside as the new owner laughs like a maniac. Hearing that chilling, unhinged laughter, The young master of the painting is totally terrified. He admits he never expected to feel his life was in actual danger inside his quiet cabin. Sure, Gio noticed the outside view shifting, but he never dreamed anyone would ever speak directly to him. Look at this guy, he taps the frame, playfully asking if the teacher can hear him. Creeped out by the bizarre vibe, the young artist immediately decides to stay quiet. He quickly realizes his canvas is now hanging inside some kind of high-end, fancy gallery. Concern washes over him as he remembers this fragile frame is his only way in or out. Gio panics, realizing that if he steps out, he'll likely be arrested for trespassing. Worse, what if people think he is some haunted portrait summoning demons and decide to burn him at the stake? Back outside, the collector wonders if he was too rude, guessing the painting spirit isn't ready to chat yet. Giving a friendly wave, the man promises he will come right back to visit him tomorrow. Just hearing that this weird guy plans to return sends Gio panicking under his tree. Despite all the stress, Gio's next morning starts off with a delicious breakfast. He decides to use his perfectly dried fruits and flowers to brew some dessert tea. The young man carefully sorts his collection of petals and dried herbs into neat wooden boxes. Right then, he suddenly remembers a pretty massive detail. He doesn't actually own a tea set. Instead of stressing, he calmly sits down right in front of his canvas. Drawing a beautiful white porcelain teapot, the painted object immediately begins to materialize in the real world. Hugging the freshly created teapot, Gio feels pretty proud of his incredible drawing skills. Pouring the hot water smoothly into his cup, he closes his eyes to savor the very first sip of his freshly brewed tea. It is incredibly peaceful. Staring at the glowing blue liquid, he's amazed by the rich flavor he managed to make. Suddenly, a system window pops up, revealing he just brewed medicinal tea using advanced alchemy. He reads through the massive immunity buffs, though there's no real way to test them on his own body. Why? Well, since entering the painting world, he doesn't have basic human physical needs anymore. Even though he still eats, sleeps, and runs around this beautiful forest, he never feels hot or cold anymore, which also means he never sweats. On top of that, he finds it highly amusing that he has zero need to use the bathroom. Gio chuckles, wondering if entering this frame has turned him into some highly evolved transcendent life form. Sure, never cleaning toilets again is a win, but he knows his actual problem is still out there. This massive problem resurfaces when the voice of that inconvenient man echoes once again, calling out to him. Gio lets out a massive tired sigh, utterly exhausted from dealing with this stubborn guy. For 11 straight days, the guild president has kept trying to make small talk, getting absolutely zero response. The annoying visitor sighs in disappointment, asking if he ever gets lonely in there, but Gio just scoffs internally. Even though the system lists the man as friendly, he is not taking any chances. The collector complains that this quiet treatment is only making him more desperate for a real chat. Ready for a shocker? He points to a bound prisoner on the floor, asking if the offering was bad. He calmly explains that the best offerings are usually either pure, flawless people or wicked sinners. He offers to fetch any sinner Gio wants, asking him to name his price. Hearing this terrifying talk of human sacrifice, Gio feels a cold sweat break out. Fearing things are sliding completely out of control, he listens as the collector tries speaking in 27 different languages. Gio tries to gulp down his delicious tea, but he feels like he is going to choke from pure stress. Listening to the employees talking, Gio discovers this guy commands one of the most powerful factions in the entire country. The smiling president asks if the spirit truly refuses to speak, but Gio's portrait remains completely still, showing absolutely zero reaction. Finally, the man with the two-toned hair gives up for the day, saying goodbye until next time. With a completely relaxed stride, the collector turns and strolls out of the luxurious exhibition hall. Gio senses absolutely no malice coming from the man, realizing he does not actually dislike him at all. Still, being a major introvert, this persistent guy leaves him feeling totally drained. He just hopes this intruder gets tired of talking to a literal painting and finally gives up. To clear his head, Gio plops a huge bag of flour on the kitchen counter. If that annoying collector keeps making small talk forever, maybe Gio should actually try answering him back. Honestly, it would be a total disaster if the guy got frustrated and burned the painting because of a lack of response. Gio mixes the dough, quietly worrying about his entire world if the canvas gets destroyed. Staring into his fireplace, the youth admits he is really not in a hurry to be burned alive. He concludes that he desperately needs a solid plan to reclaim his only exit. As sand slips through the cabin hourglass, the gallery elevator dings on the 5th basement level. A secretary wearing a dark suit and glasses steps out, holding a clipboard tightly in her hands. Making her late-night rounds, She verifies that the climate controls are perfectly set before walking down the dark corridor to inspect the state of Gio's portrait. Shining her flashlight on the gold frame, she sees nothing but a sketch of a pretty cabin in the woods, leaving her completely stunned since she was certain this was a human portrait. Right then, a terrifying, icy chill starts creeping slowly up her spine. The woman slowly turns around, her eyes wide with terror as she realizes the massive gallery hall has gone completely silent and pitch black. Just watch this. A mysterious voice echoes from the darkness with a very calm greeting as a hooded figure appears, politely offering hot tea and asking to chat. Seized by total panic, the poor secretary drops her clipboard and pen straight onto the cold floor. The Collectors Guild remains widely known as one of the absolute biggest in the entire country. Vault access is strictly limited to their leader, licensed curators, and authorized VIP buyers. A gray-haired hunter in a trench coat walks down the sweeping hallway with his briefcase. He heads to the main elevator to access the restricted basement levels of the building. Pressing the down button, he mulls over recent rumors about a basement ghost before finding a nearby employee to get a better handle on the situation. The colleague hands him a coffee, mentioning they have had 17 complaints on the 5th floor in just 2 weeks. Everyone knows their leader hoards anything he deems pretty, even if that object is actually a deadly monster. Naturally, almost all of the haunting reports here usually trace back to actual monsters. Still, the gray-haired veteran finds it pretty strange that even their most seasoned curators are complaining this much. Management tried to sweep the rumors under the rug, but he knows you cannot hide this forever. Sipping his hot coffee, he grumbles about this mess, and you just know he is going to have his hands full. Still, even while complaining about the duty, he is pretty used to handling these weird cleanup jobs. A-rank hunter Yu Sung-woon, currently working as their curator, casually asks exactly what needs to be done. The employee with glasses looks incredibly relieved, praising his companion's amazing reliability. He suggests Yu Sung-woon take over the administrative manager role, but the hunter politely turns it down. His coworker recalls that Yu Sung-woon used to work as the association's research team leader. Yu Sung-woon admits he got plenty of harsh, disappointed looks when he decided to quit that job. He confesses he really does not want to draw attention, so his friend drops the issue, agreeing they need to act fast to stop these bad rumors from spreading. The assistant hands over all the witness data, planning to run extra training for the staff very soon. According to the reports, this mysterious phantom has incredibly pale skin, dark hair, and wears a heavy cloak. The document even includes a sketch of Gio's face, noting that he is considered very handsome. Witnesses claim it is almost impossible to make eye contact with him, and he walks without making a single sound. Yu Sung-woon notes the testimonies are highly consistent, and the phantom isn't even trying to hide, making him ponder these curious details while his assistant nods along. He finds it pretty strange that despite showing up so often, not a single human has been hurt. After all, dungeon monsters are always incredibly hostile to humans, with absolutely zero exceptions. Yu Sung-woo thinks that if a tame beast actually existed, it would make headlines all over the globe. He knows the association would immediately lock him up for research long before the public heard a thing. Pointing directly at the report, Yu Sung-woo asks about this bizarre habit of handing out random gifts. The assistant explains that the entity always tries to have a normal chat, behaving just like any ordinary human. Yu Sung-woo theorizes that the ghost genuinely believes he's human, introducing himself simply as Gio. Their conversations actually flow quite smoothly, even though the terrified assistant never dares to look at him. They talk about basic everyday topics without any invasive questions, but the items Yu Sung-woo receives at the end of these chats are pretty damn weird. Reading the specific list of gifts described in the official report, Yu Sung-woo is deeply shocked, while the glass-wearing assistant watches his stunned reaction with complete seriousness. Here's the crazy part. The legendary gifts are just cheap candies, which leaves Yu Sung-woo completely baffled. He asks if the guild ever ran a proper lab analysis on the ingredients of those treats. The assistant reveals that Master Bisabeol brought in actual prisoners to test the food, so Yu Sung-woo asks if it was poisoned to hurt them. The assistant reveals that it was quite the opposite, since the food worked like highly effective medicine. It cured them. Hearing that cheap candy actually cured sick people leaves Yu Sung-woo completely speechless. The treats had perfect medicinal effects, uniquely tailored to cure whatever health problems the receiver had. Yu Sung-woo reflects that the more he hears about this ghost, the more dangerous he gets. The being effortlessly reads human health and creates customized magical cures. He does it all. And he stays perfectly hidden inside the gallery's highest security zone. Having such bizarre and complex skills, Yu Sung-woo deduces that this creature's power must be insanely high. He complains that dealing with this situation would be way simpler if the ghost were just openly hostile. Yu Sung-woo remembers that friendly gestures from dungeon civilizations are usually the most terrifying thing. This makes Yu Sung-woo remember a terrible political incident from 11 years ago, where a diplomatic team sent to another dimension returned completely and horribly deformed. The alien civilization restructured the diplomats' bodies because they viewed them as highly inefficient. Ever since that nightmare, humanity permanently labeled all dungeon creatures as their ultimate mortal enemies. Yu Sung-woo decides to take the case himself, confidently declaring that he is a true expert. The assistant thanks him deeply, and Yu Sung-woo shrugs it off as his basic professional duty. Just as Yu Sung-woo is about to step into the elevator, you can hear the terrified assistant drop one final, incredibly vital detail about how this bizarre nightmare first started. It all began the exact moment Master Bisabeol put Gio's portrait on display down on the 5th basement level. The doors slide shut. Alone in his dark trench coat, Yu Sung-woo begins his descent. Deep in thought, he remembers the smug, sly smile on Master Bisabeol's face when ordering him to handle this job. The guild leader absolutely loved flaunting his rare new artifacts and dumping impossible chores on his top curator. Grinning from ear to ear, Master Bisabeol tells Yu Sung-woo that he is officially taking over this new assignment. Raising a glass of fine wine, Master Bisabeol warns him in a chilling tone that he must protect Gio's portrait. The spectacled assistant simply closes his eyes, smiling because he feels quite bad for his co-worker. The doors close. They reveal the tense, deeply worried face of Yu Sung-woo. He descends completely alone, firmly gripping his briefcase and laser-focused on surviving this highly dangerous assignment. He chews on his lollipop. This is definitely not just another simple task. He bites down hard. He knows he's about to pull a ton of overtime on this case. Yu Sung-woo brushes back his messy white hair while walking down the dim hallway on high alert, checking his phone to see that the time is already 4:29. Staring deeply into the pitch-black shadows of the art gallery, Yu Sung-woo spots his bizarre target right in front of him. He instantly notes that the barefoot, cloaked figure matching the written file is standing right there. Peeking from behind a large pillar, Yu Sung-woo knows this mysterious creature only shows up before dawn. He wonders if the spirit worries about being seen or operates on strict rules. Concealing himself, Yu Sung-woo deduces that this humanoid must be quite intelligent. He counts himself incredibly lucky to actually spot this high-priority target on his very first night on watch. He activates his powerful sound amplification skill to the absolute limit, desperate to catch any tiny noise. Yu Sung-woo realizes that none of the regular staff possessed such highly advanced auditory skills. With his enhanced hearing active, he catches a soft rustling sound, like dry grass brushing together. It strikes him as incredibly quiet for a creature of such a massive, imposing physical stature. Yu Sung-woo narrows his eyes in the faint light, trying to read the mysterious entity and its next move. Focusing his vision, he freezes. He realizes the creature is simply staring at a canvas. Our hunter notices that the creature is acting pretty smart, avoiding any contact with the dangerous artifacts. Cloaked in dark robes, the figure slowly paces around, looking entirely focused on appreciating the art. Yu Sung-woo wonders if this entity actually likes art or is hunting for a specific item. Then, for a split second, the hood shifts, revealing the incredibly calm, handsome face of young Gio. And this is where things get wild, as the creature suddenly spins around to face him. Their eyes lock in a terrifying gaze, freezing them both right in the middle of the pitch-black hall. To Yu Sung-woo, Gio suddenly looks like an absolute god of shadow. Terrified, the hunter stumbles back, his entire body shaking from the sheer pressure of that overwhelming energy. Panic spikes as a massive purple magic crest manifests right in front of him. Yu Sung-woo just stares at the dark, crackling energy, finding his body completely paralyzed by fear. Deep within that endless, swirling dark abyss, he feels the chilling presence of something absolutely colossal. Staring directly into those glowing crimson eyes, he is overcome with an intense, holy dread. Yu Sung-woo reaches out a trembling hand, utterly overwhelmed by the massive wave of power. But in a split second, the dark-robed figure completely vanishes, leaving no trace behind. The elite hunter collapses to his knees, drenched in a sudden cold sweat as he gasps desperately for air. He stands up. Gathering his remaining strength, he tightly grips his briefcase. Terrified, he bolts. He runs desperately to escape that haunted exhibition hall. Dashing right past the golden frame of Gio, he wants nothing more than to escape this nightmare. The portrait of the youth hangs on the wall, looking completely peaceful. Yu Sung-woo realizes with sheer horror that the creature has already slipped back inside the canvas. He gets incredibly anxious, terrified that he might have accidentally angered a godlike entity. And just like that, the very first day investigating the portrait of Gio comes to a close. Meanwhile, inside the frame, Gio drops to his knees on the grass, complaining about the heart attack he almost had. Gio is completely baffled, wondering why that hunter was hiding behind a decorative vase. He thinks about it for a bit and starts to wonder if the intruder was actually just terrified of him. He recalls how the gallery staff always screamed and bolted the second they saw him. Peeking at the painting on his tree, the young man breathes a sigh of relief that the hunter is finally gone. To stay safe, he starts practicing meditation to pass as an ordinary, lifeless canvas. While he sits meditating in the peaceful grass, the adorable three-eyed rabbit hops over and happily snuggles onto his lap. No matter what, Gio is absolutely certain the hunter will return to this place. It is just a gut instinct while he tries petting the local wildlife. Gio sighs because while the creatures willingly approach him, they always scurry away the second he tries to touch them. He wistfully imagines how great it would be to have a real pet to cuddle with whenever he wanted. Suddenly, a brilliant idea strikes him. You have got to see this. His eyes fixate directly on a blank canvas. The investigation into the portrait of Gio enters day 2. Yu Sung-woo lets out a quiet sigh of surprise as he walks up to it. Our hunter quietly studies the portrait of Gio, which is hanging perfectly back in its usual spot. Relieved, he sighs. Gio did not vanish, so it is time to begin the real investigation. Yesterday proved this artwork is no standard monster. To survive, Yu Sung-woo must decode the rules of this strange painting and make sure he follows them to the letter. His ultimate objective is figuring out exactly what this entity is and if it can live peacefully alongside humanity. Honestly, he admits to himself that just looking into those eyes drains every bit of his energy. Certain beasts born from the Great Cataclysm can only be countered once you fully decode their unique lore. Since direct combat usually ends in disaster, humans must study these creatures to survive. Suddenly, the painting of Gio speaks up, asking if the hunter wants to have a chat. Flashing a warm smile, Yu Sung-woo replies that he would absolutely love to converse with the painted youth. This soft, diplomatic approach is exactly how humanity has managed to survive on Earth. Gio is incredibly touched, instantly deciding that this hunter must be a truly wonderful person. He remembers that despite their chaotic first encounter scaring them both, the man stayed perfectly composed. He deeply admires how the hunter shows zero fear, behaving normally even while talking to a painting. The hunter politely apologizes for the chaos yesterday, making Gio view him as a model citizen. Gio ponders that in a world overrun by giant monsters, a talking painting is actually pretty normal. The youth tells him not to sweat it, and Yu Sung-woo warmly thanks him for the kind understanding. Right after, Gio straight up asks for the hunter's name, making Sung-woo wonder if this conversation is repeating the exact same pattern as the previous 17 victims. After all, he knows names are the single most crucial part of any soul-binding contract. Sure, a forced contract is risky, but he highly doubts this painting can do any real harm with just a name. Giving a formal introduction, the hunter introduces himself as Yu Sung-woo, which Gio slowly repeats before noticing his visitor has tons of burning questions. Sung-woo admits he is pretty skeptical, especially after that intense eye contact they shared just yesterday. He asks directly if it really was Gio watching him out in the hallway, and Gio answers yes without any hesitation. Stunned by this raw honesty, Sung-woo asks if the youth can actually step out of the frame. Gio calmly confirms he can, keeping a completely serene, peaceful expression on his face while clearing up the hunter's doubts. Gio easily spots the hunter's tension, making Sung-woo realize with embarrassment that his reaction was way too obvious. Sung-woo confesses he is just shocked to see some non-human entity spilling its secrets so easily. Gio simply replies that he has absolutely no reason to hide anything, especially since the hunter asked. Sung-woo then asks what would happen if his intentions were evil. But watch this, the direct answer from the frame completely shuts him down, calling that a massive lie. Gio explains he talked to Sung-woo simply because he is a good person, asking if that explanation is enough. The hunter swallows hard, realizing this entity can somehow instantly tell good from evil. He wonders what would happen if this painting ever stood in front of someone it judged as evil. Regaining his cool, the youth in the canvas takes this moment to ask if the hunter has any more questions left. Sung-woo quickly confirms he does, asking if the friendly ghost handing out delicious treats around the gallery is actually Gio himself. The hunter finds it quite strange when the youth suddenly hesitates to answer this incredibly simple question. He grows nervous, wondering if Gio took offense or simply hated being referred to as a mere ghost. Fearing he totally ruined the vibe, the hunter quickly apologizes just in case he ended up offending Gio. Gio gets a bit discouraged, remembering how everyone always ran away from him in terror, but admits a talking portrait does sound pretty haunted. But the young man is about to drop a major revelation. Gio directly reveals that unlike scary ghosts, he never actually died. The hunter wonders if he was literally born a portrait, and why he kept wandering the gallery. Gio explains he was simply curious about the world, especially after suddenly turning into a painting and being brought here. He confesses that the incredibly rare artworks displayed all over the gallery caught his eye quite a bit. Plus, he was pretty curious about the employees working here, wondering what their daily lives were like. Gio just wanted to learn everyone's names and personal tastes. Even in a world that has changed so much, he explains that anyone living completely alone naturally craves connection and conversation, and he definitely does not want to be burned. Sung-woo finds it quite fascinating that this deep interest in humanity is expressed in such a dry, emotionless voice. Just like other monsters, Gio adds that his curiosity spikes even more when meeting someone polite like him. Smiling, Sung-woo comments that the youth in the painting apparently prefers polite guests. Gio mentions the staff are much nicer to talk to than that red boss, leading Sung-woo to deduce he means Bisabeol. The youth in the painting explains quite simply that the loud guildmaster just talks way too much for his taste. He adds that Bisabeol rambles so much, it is quite hard to even get a word in. You can't help but chuckle as Sung-woo stifles a laugh, realizing his annoying boss landed on a talking painting's blacklist. Now the hunter finally understands why Bisabeol had zero info on this artifact, since Gio found him rude and simply ignored him. Sung-woo quickly apologizes for his boss's weird behavior, but Gio says it is fine since the man did not seem truly evil, making the hunter realize Gio is not hostile to rude people, provided they are not actually bad. Acting completely relaxed in front of an S-rank hunter is crazy. Sung-woo studies the painting quite seriously, wondering what this young man truly is, when Gio suddenly breaks the silence to ask if he has any final questions to clear up. The hunter asks if Gio can actually see the outside world even when his portrait's eyes are tightly closed. He asks if the youth was watching them this entire time, trying to understand why a powerful entity would want to chat so much. Gio explains he only watched because the outside scenery moved past like a bus window heading to Seoul on a busy holiday. He explains that the portrait only opens its eyes to speak, a trick he actually figured out using a mirror back in the burned school. Other than that, the portrait always keeps its eyes closed, letting Gio safely observe the outside world from within. Since he is stuck inside a frame, Gio says things work a bit differently. He has to watch our world, but honestly finds these moving images quite fascinating. The hunter swallows hard, offering only a brief reply as he tries to digest that profound explanation. He suddenly realizes that to Gio, the real masterpiece on display isn't the canvas at all. Instead, it's the actual humans watching from the outside. Trying to lighten the mood, Sung-woon mentions that Gio's blunt voice really caught him off guard. The boy in the portrait says he was simply practicing proper etiquette, leaving the hunter lost in thought. Gio asks if it isn't completely natural for any human to show proper manners when interacting with other people. Wearing a calm expression, the hunter has to admit that talking to this entity was actually pretty pleasant. And just like that, the second day of investigating Gio's mysterious portrait officially comes to an end. But get this, next morning at 9, the peace is completely shattered. The office door flies open as someone yells a desperate warning to the guildmaster. Completely ignoring all the loud commotion, Bisabeol just keeps calmly sipping his hot tea. The guildmaster smiles peacefully, asking what exactly could be so dangerous. Sung-woon rushes into the room, warning that the danger has to do with the portrait they are holding. The hunter explains that this creature is completely different from monsters that suffocate people with fake kindness. He points out the strangest detail of all this entity actually considers himself a real human being. The hunter doesn't know if Gio truly believes it or is just acting, but warns these cases only look safe on the surface. He adds that if anything goes wrong with an entity like this, the final outcome will be absolutely catastrophic. He warns that the painting judges good and evil by its own logic, fearing how it might react to someone it deems bad. Sung-woon asks if they should send the painting to the association, but quickly stops, already knowing the boss will say no. Bisabeol thinks the creature sounds pretty docile, and tells Sung-woon to keep researching until he can introduce them. The guildmaster says it would be a shame to get ignored again, ordering the hunter to find out what Gio likes. Feeling pretty awkward, Sung-woon accepts the request, knowing it is already his job anyway. Bisabeol finds his employees' cynicism hilarious, while the hunter remarks that the boss only hires cynical people. The guildmaster's deep obsession with collecting isn't just for rare items, he handpicks every single one of his employees too. Bisabeol definitely doesn't just hire anyone. It is honestly crazy how Gio manages to pressure these powerful hunters with absolutely nothing but his quiet presence. It really shows the incredibly powerful caliber of this mysterious entity's soul. The hunter promises regular reports, but says it is tough to figure out the painting's true nature in just a few days. Wondering if his boss wants to destroy the world, Sung-woon leaves as Bisabeol quietly dismisses him. With that, The third day of investigating Gio's portrait officially begins at the gallery. Sitting on a simple chair in front of Gio's painting, Sung-woon starts talking, asking if he ever gets lonely. The boy inside the painting responds directly that he doesn't really feel lonely in there. The hunter smiles faintly, quickly apologizing in case he was being a bit too intrusive. Since only staff watch the art, Sung-woon figured Gio left his frame out of pure loneliness to wander the gallery. Gio admits he prefers places without people, making the hunter ask if he feels uncomfortable talking like this. Gio says no, explaining that he talked so much in his past life that he always wished for a future where he wouldn't have to speak at all. He reveals he was always searching for a place where he didn't have to keep talking to others, a quiet place where he wasn't trapped or bound by any daily responsibilities, and where he didn't need to constantly worry or care about what was happening around him. The boy in the portrait confesses he always wanted a life like this, and the painting fits his dream perfectly. After listening to in silence for a quiet moment, Sung-woon asks if the young man was truly a real human being in his past life. Gio assures him that he is still human, which makes the hunter wave his hands in panic, quickly apologizing for the way he worded it. The hunter explains he just wanted to know if Gio was once a normal human outside a canvas, and Gio calmly confirms it. This makes Sung-woon reflect on how humanoid monsters usually fall into two big categories. The first type are born as monsters, but evolve to look perfectly human, while the second category is for those who started as humans, but transformed into monsters somewhere along the way. Sung-woon decides Gio belongs to that second group, which is probably why he still views himself as a real human. It actually makes him pretty fascinating, since monsters keeping human memories are usually consumed by dark, negative emotions. Yet the boy in the portrait looks incredibly peaceful, wrapped in a deeply quiet state of calm. Still, the hunter notices this quiet vibe is not exactly pleasant. It feels almost like the melancholic quiet of a funeral. Staring at the boy, Sung-woon gets a chill, realizing Gio looks like the absolute definition of the end. Shifting the focus, the hunter asks if he ever gets bored in there. Gio admits he occasionally does, prompting Sung-woon to ask how he even has fun. Gio answers that he usually just has a meal, leaving Sung-woon completely stunned, wondering if a canvas drawing can actually eat. The boy calmly explains he really loves eating, leaving the shocked hunter struggling to process this incredibly bizarre reveal. Sung-woon thinks Gio definitely does not look like a big eater, silently praying the kid's meals do not consist of human flesh. Apologizing if it sounds a bit rude, the hunter asks directly how on earth a painted boy manages to eat. Gio explains he usually just cooks for himself, starting by simply imagining whatever dish he is currently in the mood to eat. Next, the painted boy gathers all the required ingredients for the recipe, doing all the prep work with absolute care. After that, he uses his personal kitchen tools to whip up the food and serve the finished meal. Gio wraps up by claiming he is just an ordinary guy, finding Sung-woon's intense curiosity about his eating habits pretty weird. The hunter stays quiet, wondering if the kid realizes that giving such a detailed explanation actually makes him look even less human. Gio seems to pick up on his doubts, watching the hunter's uneasy expression closely from the other side of the canvas. Wait, here's where it clicks. Sung-woon remembers the first rule: whatever Gio draws in there becomes completely real. Spotting the hunter's growing interest, Gio asks if he is curious to see what else is possible within this painted dimension. The boy says he completely gets it, admitting he was quite curious about the limits of what he could create in here. Glancing at a rough sketch sitting on his easel, Gio makes a quick decision on what to do next. He decides to ask for Sung-woon's help to run a quick test, noting that being trapped in a frame actually offers unique ways to have fun, but to do that, he needs a little assistance, which immediately makes the hunter pretty curious about how this whole process works. The painted boy invites Sung-woon to join in, promising that he can also show the hunter a pretty good time. Sung-woon tenses up instantly, asking exactly what kind of fun this mysterious entity is talking about. To the hunter's utter shock, Gio simply asks him to paint a quick apple right onto his portrait. Confused, Sung-woon asks if he should really draw over a masterpiece, and Gio calmly assures him it is not hard at all. Holding the brush, Sung-woon hesitates, feeling incredibly uncomfortable about defacing such a seemingly perfect work of art. Gio gasps in mild surprise when Sung-woon pulls art supplies straight out of his briefcase, asking if he always carries that kind of stuff around. Sung-woon explains he always tries to keep handy gear on him, since nobody ever knows what might go down inside this dangerous gallery. He adds that because of this constant threat, staying fully prepared for absolutely any situation is always the smartest move. Still, the hunter can't help but wonder what would have happened if he hadn't brought these exact art supplies with him today. The actual red apple he paints on the canvas is pretty simple, created with quick, basic strokes and absolutely no refinement. Feeling somewhat embarrassed by his terrible art skills, Sungwoon admits that it did not turn out looking very pretty. Geo offers a quick thanks, and right then, his physical hand reaches straight out of the canvas to grab the drawn fruit. Sungwoon completely freezes, letting out a sharp gasp of disbelief at the impossible sight. Right before the hunter's eyes, Geo takes a huge bite of the drawn apple, chewing it with genuine relish. Sungwoon's eyes go wide, utterly unable to process what is happening right in front of him. Are you seeing this? Sungwoon is completely stunned, realizing Geo literally just ate a flat drawing. Shaking all over, he tries to wrap his head around the fact that this kid just ate a scribbled apple. His mind stutters as his heart pounds, completely overwhelmed by the terrifying implications of what just happened. He honestly admits to himself that in his entire life, he has never seen anything quite this insane. Inside the portrait, Geo highly praises the flavor, calling it perfectly ripe and incredibly delicious. Sungwoon just stares at his paintbrush in total confusion. He can't comprehend how a quick scribble made with cheap paint could somehow have a real taste and smell. Geo casually explains that, since he lives inside art, he can do some pretty wild things right from his canvas. In fact, on days when he feels too lazy to cook, he simply draws a fully cooked meal and digs in. The hunter gulps hard. He knows for a fact that no normal human could ever pull off a stunt like this. Completely chill, Geo looks at the hunter and asks him if he finds all this pretty fascinating to watch. Once Sungwoo nods, Geo says he gets it and wants to pay him back for that apple drawing. Intrigued by the promise of a real reward, the hunter can't help but wonder what's coming next. Geo actually thinks Sungwoo is pretty sweet for just going along with his weird request to draw an apple. He remembers that right after opening his eyes inside the canvas, he started painting all kinds of different gems to test his boundaries. He recalls grinding those precious stones into a fine powder, turning them into glowing paint to use for his masterpieces. Somehow, it felt like the paint and the artwork itself were actually coming alive, breathing like a wild animal with every vibrant stroke of his brush. For him, the entire process became pure, unexplainable magic. Deep down, Geo felt anything was possible, and he just had to see what happened when he reached out to the real world. Now, look closely. The hunter suddenly notices that the face inside the painting is covered in bright splashes of colorful paint. Geo studies the outcome, realizing his hunch was absolutely right on the money. But there are rules here. A sudden quest screen pops up, demanding he pay the hunter a reward within a 6-day deadline. Right on cue, a chiming notification rings out as a glowing reddish gem materializes on the screen. The mesmerizing, vibrant crystal begins to slide right out of the painting's golden frame. Sungwoo reaches out and catches the glowing stone, watching it solidifying into the real world. Geo hands over the flashing gem, calling it his official payment for the drawing favor from earlier. Sungwoo can only stare at this impossible crystal structure, totally mind-blown that Geo literally painted this into existence. He inspects the gem with intense focus, asking what kind of rare stone this actually is. Geo confesses he has no clue, though he suspects it came from a place so incredibly deep that it runs super hot. Apparently, it slept near the very core of the planet, and maybe it is hot because it reminds him of an old friend. Feeling the heavy, burning heat of the stone in his palms, the hunter reaches a massive realization. This painting is definitely not some mindless dungeon monster, and so, day 3 of the investigation ends. Looking at the brilliant glow of the jewel, the hunter keeps repeating the word origin. He explains that after everything he has witnessed, this is the only logical conclusion he can draw. The origin is a cosmic, godlike being that controls the balance of the universe and writes the laws of reality. It basically runs like an absolute system, widely known as the ultimate god of gods. Dungeons that popped up on Earth 30 years ago are actually separate dimensions spawned directly from this supreme being's leftover energy. Dungeons are where monsters crawl out from a dark truth well known to the high-ranking gardeners. The hunter remembers that while monsters crawl from dungeons, the true children of the origin are born directly from the source. He notes their fundamental natures are worlds apart, but Geo is somehow completely different from either of them. As the hunter goes on about Geo, Bisabeol can only stare at the radiant stone with sheer curiosity. He explains that Geo actually created a completely new form of life, marking the end of day 6 of their exploration. Back at the gallery, Sungwoo is still struggling to process Geo's insane power to breathe life into his art. Wait till you see this. Geo proudly introduces these glowing blue birds as his new family, laughing that he just made them for fun. These tiny magical blue energy birds flutter around happily, circling all over the place near the smiling youth. Stunned to see actual living things flying around inside a painting, the hunter asks if there are many more, and if Geo painted them all by himself. Geo proudly tells him he made about 100, joking that they are pretty talkative despite not having any real vocal cords. He adds that sometimes these little guys gather together in a single massive flock, blending into a gorgeous glowing pond within the landscape. The kid shares that they love dressing up by storing small objects inside their squishy, gelatinous bodies, each bird having its own weird taste. Hearing this detailed breakdown, the hunter goes totally quiet, completely overwhelmed by the reality-bending power unfolding right before his eyes. Sung-woo points out that Geo talks about them like actual living creatures, wondering if these birds actually have souls, a feat that utterly crushes any dungeon monster. Sitting inside his canvas, the youth just stares back with a calm, unreadable look, replying in a quiet, mysterious tone that he wonders about that too. The hunter is fully aware that the true children of the origin do not have egos or their own personal consciousness, making them completely unable to hold a normal conversation. He pieces it together. Geo is both a painting and a human, an impossible entity with the power to alter physical reality at will. Yet, he does not feel any divine presence coming from the boy, which totally rules out the idea of him being some bored god playing around. Sungwoon wonders, can Geo actually paint a destiny, forge memories, or even create a living human being? The hunter realizes something. If this kid holds that kind of absolute, godlike power all on his own, he is completely off the charts. Geo shrugs. Maybe it is possible, maybe not, but he makes it crystal clear that he has absolutely zero interest in trying it. The boy explains his thoughts. Just the thought of creating life is pretty disturbing, calling it way too massive of a task. Geo humbly adds to that. He is really nothing special, certainly not enough to pull off a miracle of that scale. Looking out from the canvas, the youth sincerely asks the hunter not to look up to him. Better to avoid those thoughts entirely. Hearing this, the hunter stays quiet. He lets the heavy weight of those quiet, simple words sink in. Sungwoon respectfully agrees to his terms. He promises to keep that critical bit of advice locked in his mind. Back in his boss's office, Sungwoon asks his boss directly, "Are they really not going to turn the painting over to the Hunter Association?" Bisabeol just smiles. Right now, the only thing he actually cares to understand is the story inside the art. The guildmaster admits he has no clue. What are Geo's true skills? How vast is his soul, or his role in the world's origin? The hunter argues his case. Since Geo is clearly a force of immeasurable impact, the association should study him. Wearing a dry, ironic smile, Bisabeol calls his curator by his full name. He snaps his attention back. The guildmaster asks a simple question. Has he already forgotten the one major task he was given when hired? Bisabeol proudly states his rule. He has absolutely no use for war weapons, because he only chases pure masterpieces. He points forward with conviction. This very pursuit of beauty is exactly why he built his company and this guild. He has plenty of pride as an artist. But as a hunter? Absolutely zero. He lays out his eccentric worldview. He points out the truth. No true collector buys a masterpiece just to ward off bad luck or bring sweet dreams. To him, an art lover's only real job? Unravel and admire the beautiful, unique story hidden within the canvas. The Collector's Guildmaster wraps up with a declaration. He only wants to protect that fascinating tale himself. Staring with an incredibly intense, glowing gaze, talk about a chilling warning. Bisabeol asks if the curator realizes they cannot stop what is coming, while the painting hangs silently, radiating a pretty calm, deeply mysterious energy. The boss reflects on this. This force is basically a talking natural disaster, but luckily, it has zero ill will. Deep inside his painted fantasy world, Geo calmly kneads his bread dough right next to those glowing, colorful jewels. The guildmaster considers finding this kid an absolute stroke of luck. He calls it an impossible miracle. He says that whatever Geo's true nature is, they absolutely cannot afford to throw away this incredible miracle. Bisabeol points out the truth. Once the painting hit the auction block, it was bound to attract attention from everyone. Sungwoon deduces his boss's plan. He acted quickly just to prevent the painting from causing some major disaster. The guildmaster confidently notes his edge. He sees far more about the situation than most would ever imagine. Bisabeol figures out their next move. If the entity inside the painting believes he is human, they should treat him like one. Suddenly, we're taken right back into the artwork. Geo watches in surprise as a tiny object slips and rolls off his workbench. One of his glowing little yellow critters lets out a cute tiny growl. It shines brightly in the background. Bisabeol advises his curator on this. Do not think narrow-mindedly like typical hunters. Start dreaming much bigger. Sungwoon agrees with this vision. He speaks with deep conviction that Geo is a genuinely good, incredibly kind person. Bisabeol chuckles, pointing out that even though the painted youth absolutely hates being disturbed, he never holds a single grudge over it. Someone who stays grudge-free even when constantly annoyed has to be a remarkably kind soul. The guildmaster concludes that Gio acts with deep respect and compassion, actually fearing he might harm others, which finally closes their investigation. The hunter is shocked by this. Someone like Gio is afraid of hurting people? Humanity should basically look like ants to him. Bisabeol repeats that Gio is just kind. This makes Sungwoon wonder how he can be so sure. But Bisabeol just boasts. He declares his expertise. This level of sheer intuition is exactly what it takes to be a master, needing only a single glance. Finally, the master warns his hunter. Never go snooping into Gio's head so they do not end up irritating him. He is just being a great conversationalist. On top of that, Bisabeol casually suggests that the hunter should take Gio out for a walk in the fresh air every now and then. Sungwoo stares at him, dead serious. He asks if the master is actually serious about this wild suggestion. But Bisabeol just waves his hand calmly, confirming his decision without a single hint of hesitation. The hunter says his goodbyes, laughing at how much he worried in his role as the Collector Guild curator. He decides to trust his master, placing full faith in his incredible power of judgment. He fully trusts those special eyes that see what ordinary humans can never perceive. With a huge smile, Bisabeol orders the staff to immediately give Gio the absolute best care and treatment their guild can offer. He walks back through the glowing soul streets, deeply lost in thought about his new task. He smiles with immense relief that he does not have to hand over this cute, fluffy origin creature to the association. The hunter knows the association's research is incredibly brutal, basically amounting to torture. After all, Yu Sungwoo has his own history as a highly respected gardener. Now get this, a mythical origin creature actually chooses one special human to guard it. These gardeners dedicate their entire souls to the job. Because the state of the garden directly changes dungeon difficulty levels, they take massive pride in keeping their sanctuary safe. Because of this, they form incredibly deep bonds with the strange origin creatures that make up their special sanctuaries. Walking along, he spots a Bungeopang stall, noting how hard it is to find these street treats nowadays. The hunter recalls how much the painted youth loves eating a good meal. He recalls the master advising him to treat Gio like a normal human, keeping up the polite front to maintain their mutual respect. Because of that, the hunter resolves to keep this comfortable little misunderstanding going for as long as he can. Returning to the room with a bag of steaming Bungeopang, Sungwoo smiles and asks the young man how old he is. From inside the frame, Gio calmly replies that he is exactly 29 years old. Hearing this, our 33-year-old hunter cannot help but flash a highly amused, joyful grin. He admits his genuine surprise, chuckling that Gio is actually quite young. When Gio mentions that people usually think he is much older, Sungwoo stammers out a quick apology, hoping he did not offend him. He is absolutely blown away that an entity this powerful, hand-picked by Bisabeol, is under 30 years old. Well, he actually thought Gio was even younger. Seizing the moment, the youth in the canvas asks about Sungwoo's age in return. The hunter reveals he is 33, prompting Gio to note that he looks quite young for his age. Sungwoo lets out a quiet, holding back laugh upon hearing such a genuine compliment from a magical painting. It is pretty hilarious getting called young by a supreme origin being. Then, Gio suggests they should just speak informally. The hunter happily agrees and drops the formal speech, handing over the warm Bungeopang while secretly planning their first little outdoor walk. Days fly by, and the investigation of Gio's portrait reaches its 17th day in the gallery. Explaining the magic, the hunter compares the origin to a human body, and the garden to its vital organs. He describes the garden as being like the veins, the beating heart, or even the eyes of that unique individual. Gio is totally spellbound by these deep stories, while the hunter admits he finds the young painted youth just as fascinating. But he also warns him that managing a garden is incredibly tough, and many brave gardeners lose their lives on the job. Gio listens closely, asking if someone is always absolutely forced to become a gardener. Sungwoo explains it is never a free choice. Even while working as a curator, he could never just cast his gardener duties aside. Handing over a tiny bag of requested seeds, Sungwoo watches as Gio offers a warm thank you, physically reaching his hands straight out of the canvas. Honestly, that is pretty wild to see. And the hunter laughs, admitting it is the first time only Gio's hands reached out. Worried for his friend's safety, Gio softly asks if the life of a gardener is not too difficult. Sungwoo admits it is definitely a bit tough, but reassures him that it is a completely manageable situation. He shares that whenever he shuts his eyes, he can clearly see a massive mountain range covered in snow and glaciers. He says its sheer beauty could captivate anyone, and owning an entire secret garden all to yourself is truly wonderful. The youth in the frame listens in deep silence, showing immense interest in how the hunter cherishes his private garden back in his own world. Geo softly whispers that he completely understands those warm emotions, as he gently pets one of his adorable yellow creatures. In his own way, Geo feels exactly the same about his world. Wearing a pretty warm smile, the hunter curiously asks if the young man actually feels the same way. Yu Sung-woon asks if Geo would ever want to step out of his painting, promising to happily show him the whole outside world. Hearing this sudden offer, Geo gets quite thoughtful in his quiet forest, wondering if it would really feel like a fun vacation. Yu Sung-woon knows that tossing an invitation like this to a literal primordial god is a pretty heavy deal. Think about it, they still do not know what Geo actually is, making his impact on reality completely impossible to predict. Since they cannot stop what is coming anyway, the hunter figures it is best to uncover his secrets before things actually start spiraling out of control. He points out that Geo probably knows almost nothing about society and insists they go explore together so he can show him around. Geo wonders if the time has finally come to live among humans again, eventually agreeing to Yu Sung-woon's exciting offer through the canvas. Decided on his choice, Geo asks the hunter when exactly they should begin their journey. Meanwhile, seeing him go totally quiet, the glowing little yellow bird cutely comments that her daddy seems pretty lost in thought right now. Starting to till his soil, Geo quietly admits to himself that people from the outside seemed quite terrified of his presence. He realizes his living paintings might seem completely unnatural, making him look like some sort of terrifying monster to ordinary human beings. Geo remembers that when outsiders spoke to him, they looked like they were staring into a void, almost as if they existed in two completely different resolutions. Even though that weird distance caught him quite off guard back then, he tells himself it was not necessarily a bad thing. Having already promised to go out with Yu Sung-woon, Geo now wants to find some way to fix this strange barrier between them. He adjusts his straw hat under the blazing sun, totally focused on wrapping up his daily chores in his peaceful little garden. Admiring his freshly tilled dirt, Geo smiles warmly, remembering his grandmother's classic advice that those who do not work do not eat. He fondly visualizes the sweet old woman cheering him on, which makes the little yellow bird tilt its head in pure curiosity. Geo giggles at his tiny hat companion, telling her she already does her job just by being cute, so she never has to worry. He admits it was quite shocking when she started talking, but since she is so warm and special, he decides she deserves a real name. Carrying the glowing little creature back to his cozy cabin, Geo is quite relieved to see she is genuinely excited about getting a name. He cradles the golden bird with deep affection, starting to brainstorm the absolute perfect nickname for his feathered little friend. His expression turns incredibly serious as the young man inspects the glowing little animal from literally every single angle to evaluate her. Geo admits his first ideas were pretty bad, joking that her daddy says silly things sometimes. Noticing her serious little expression, he happily suggests naming her Honey because her tiny body has a bright, sweet yellow color that looks exactly like real honey. Since the little bird seems to love her new name, Geo playfully teases that she is a very generous companion for accepting it so easily. The young painter heads to his studio to finish his landscape before napping. Holding his brush with a very firm grip, he prepares to put down the absolute final details on his canvas. He starts gliding the brush smoothly across the surface, pouring all his focus into capturing the violent motion of the crashing ocean waves. Each precise, masterfully crafted brushstroke brings the rough, untamed waters to life with stunning realism on his canvas. Suddenly, check this out, a glowing system window pops up right in front of his face, searching for a compatible new dimension. Brutal, monster-infested landscapes flicker on screen, as if being scanned by the active system. Immediately after, the bright alert flashes green, confirming a brand new dimension has finally been found. His fresh painting of the wild sea starts emitting an intense, magical glow that fills his entire studio with mysterious raw power. Completely oblivious to this chaos, Geo is already tucked under his blankets, fast asleep after a hard day of work. Meanwhile, dawn breaks peacefully over the valley as tiny blue creatures float gently along the stream. As the morning light slowly fills the bedroom, the young painter starts to slowly drift out of his deep slumber. He practically jumps out of his skin when he sees a blue holographic screen hovering right in front of his face. Still half asleep, Geo sits up and grumbles about being immediately spammed with irritating system warnings. Right as his eyes open, the system shows a card of his freshly finished wave painting, officially naming the location, the Breathing Sea. He catches sight of other floating screens, showing off wild names like Animal Kingdom and City of the Void for his creations. Piece by piece, Geo starts putting the puzzle together, realizing the system just officially named the landscapes he painted yesterday. His canvases are literally birthing entire dimensions, making him wonder if shaping whole new fantasy worlds is something a regular human being should even be doing. Right then, little honey flutters its glowing wings, coming down to perch snugly and affectionately right on its creator's shoulder. He just shrugs. Flashing a thumbs up, Geo decides that as long as this process is fun, he's fine. Gently petting the small creature, he jokes that the system probably noticed his terrible naming skills and happily took that difficult chore right off his hands. Staring closer at the glowing words, Geo wonders what compatible host and synchronization even mean. Desperate to get some real answers, Geo issues a quick mental command for the system to stop stalling and explain. The holographic screen blinks, revealing this feature is just a handy shortcut designed to help him understand unfamiliar worlds much faster. It explains that out of all the beings in that specific dimension, whoever matches Geo the most gets labeled as his compatible host. To his absolute shock, he reads that with this host's consent, he can borrow their body and soul to explore this new world. Spotting names like Giovanni and Argio on the screen, Geo laughs, wondering if the system just picked random guys with Geo in their name. Murmuring quietly, he highly doubts something as critical as a host would be chosen by something so simple. After all, if it were only about the name, the system wouldn't bother using a heavy word like compatible. Another condition. Far more important than that, Geo figures it comes down to their actual soul affinity. Grinning at the thought that his life is about to get incredibly interesting. Suddenly, his gaze shifts to another holographic tab showing the City of the Void, complete with a warning that this place doesn't exist on any map yet. Look at this, a button pops up asking to register the location, meaning Geo might have literally birthed a brand new universe. Smirking at the reality that things are about to get really wild, the young artist slams the confirm button without a second thought. He tells little honey that life is absolutely beautiful, teasing the silent, confused creature to just ride the wave because things are moving fast. Immediately after, a sudden system chime rings out, offering a helpful tip to solve that frustrating visual resolution problem he was stressing over. Grinning at the perfect timing, Geo looks down at his small, loyal companion and happily notes that they are definitely heading in the right direction now. The screen explains that to fix this glaring visual bug, he has to synchronize with the host version of Geo himself. Seeing this as the perfect excuse to have some fun, he reaches out and taps Giovanni's profile on the glowing display. Instantly, Geo is pulled right through space, landing flat on his back on a rusty hospital gurney inside a dark lab completely flooded with deep blue light. Realizing he was dumped like trash and that little honey is nowhere to be seen, Geo sarcastically complains about the terrible delivery service. As he looks around, a new screen confirms he has successfully linked to Giovanni's inner mental landscape. Scanning the creepy, desolate room, he notes that this mental domain looks an awful lot like the inside of a ruined old hospital. Right then, heavy footsteps echo outside, and a towering man with long blonde hair and flowing white robes steps through a massive wooden door. The stranger's face is incredibly calm, yet carrying a deeply sorrowful look under his eyes. As the man stares back at our young hero in his dark cloak, Geo gasps quietly, utterly stunned as he gets a clear look at the stranger's face. He greets him. Pretty timidly, actually. Unable to ignore that, the man looks exactly like him. Beaming with a warm, almost divine aura, the stranger politely introduces himself as Giovanni of the legendary House Bartland. Geo introduces himself back. Stunned by the blonde man's appearance, Geo realizes this host is indeed his perfect match, noting how remarkably similar they look. He secretly thinks to himself that if he were born in another land, he would look exactly like this. Giovanni smiles gently, pointing out that they likely share a whole lot more than just a matching face. Geo shakes his head humbly, admitting he could never pull off a smile that is half as warm or welcoming. He explains his stiff face always causes misunderstandings, making people assume he carries some tragic history. Back in class, classmates would literally whisper that he was hiding a dark, dangerous past, all because of his cold expression. But honestly, Geo confesses that whenever he wore that scary, intense scowl, he was really just daydreaming about the lunch bell ringing. Giovanni finds it pretty funny, calling it a cute concern that reminds him of his past students. He promises that from now on, the young man will learn to smile just like him. Geo wonders if such a deep shift could really happen just from a simple system synchronization. Stepping carefully, the young man admits he honestly expected Giovanni to lose full control of his body and soul to him. Geo. He asks if the priest feels any fear or anger. After all, taking everything just to explore a new dimension feels like outright robbery. To his absolute surprise, Giovanni stays incredibly calm and explains that this is no robbery. The priest reveals that he already met his end. His soul went back to the sun while his body turned to dust, though he quickly corrects himself, noting he was never actually buried. He admits with deep sadness that his entire homeland was completely swallowed and wiped out by the waves of a massive ocean. Stunned, Gio asks if his home really got swallowed up, and Giovanni confirms his whole world was eaten by the sea. The young painter listens in total silence, showing immense empathy and respect for someone who lost absolutely everything to the endless sea. He wonders if such a heavy tragedy is too much to share with a stranger, but happily keeps listening as requested. "Please," Giovanni whispers. He explains that only mermaids survive down there, and their planet shrank like a wooden board, turning into a strictly ruled dungeon. Hearing the word dungeon, Gio instantly remembers Yu Sung-woon talking about dimensions born after the cataclysm. Giovanni admits it was totally new to him, but everything clicked the second Seogeo called. Since they are fundamentally the same being, their soul connection tightens. Looking at Gio upside down like a reflection on a lake, Giovanni makes it clear that they are not actually the same person. Instead, they are distinct individuals who somehow share a highly unique connection. By some crazy twist of fate, the two of them just happen to be born with an unbelievable amount of similarities. The priest reveals that their souls are going to merge now, which is pretty much a whole new way to reincarnate or resurrect. Through this merging process, they will experience a brand new life together, and in this way, he can keep existing inside the origin itself. Quite intrigued, the young painter repeats that strange word, trying hard to wrap his head around what exactly the priest meant by mentioning it. Giovanni smiles softly, explaining that even if it sounds weird right now, Gio is actually already living right inside this origin. Gio asks if his homeworld is the origin, suddenly remembering he heard about this term from his new buddy. But he knows that name was just made up by humans on Earth. Nobody actually knows the true name of the origin, let alone the rules or the physical shape of this mysterious entity. Giovanni smiles gently, mentioning that as a pretty humble soul, he simply answered the system's call to sync up. Clasping his hands timidly, he makes a single request if possible. Could Gio look after the sun god of his old world? Just look at him completely surprised, pointing to his own chest at such a wild request from the priest. Gio panics, feeling way too ordinary to handle such a massive responsibility. But the blonde priest just chuckles, admitting he felt the exact same way. He explains that without followers, a god gets completely forgotten, and as a child of that divinity, he naturally worries about his creator. He only asks Gio to remember the sun god occasionally, just chatting with him like an old friend. Through this, the young painter can borrow a bit of divine strength to survive his trip across the dimensions. The Priest of Light guarantees with absolute certainty that this tiny task won't represent any kind of heavy burden for the young painter. Gio compares it to keeping lonely seniors company, a volunteer job he actually did back in his college days. The young painter asks if there is any other wish, but Giovanni just jokes back, asking if babysitting a literal god isn't already a big enough burden for him to carry around. Gio grins, thinking that for a guy who used to live up in the Gangwon-do Mountains, keeping lonely elders happy is a total piece of cake. Giovanni looks incredibly peaceful and relieved, knowing his beloved god is finally going to be in safe, reliable hands. Suddenly, the priest whispers a woman's name with deep, heavy sadness, while the vivid image of a flashing mermaid tail floats into their minds. Hearing that heavy whisper, Gio repeats the name Arya, asking who she actually is. With an incredibly heavy look, Giovanni reveals she was his disciple, and makes a chilling request: Gio must bring a definitive end to her. A terrifying, raw vision suddenly flashes in the young man's mind, an entire ancient city swallowed completely by the pitch-black darkness of the ocean floor. Gio's consciousness abruptly snaps right back to the quiet, peaceful safety of his beautiful forest cabin. He opens his eyes to find little Honey waiting patiently on the table, absolutely thrilled that its creator is finally back. But then pain. A brutal wave of intense cold strikes Gio, forcing him to curl up in absolute agony on his bed. A system window pops up, confirming Gio accepted the quest to speak with the sun god and bring closure to the little mermaid. Little Honey desperately flaps its golden wings in a panic, completely startled by the sharp look of absolute agony suddenly stamped across Gio's face. Gio gasps that he is fine, but his body shakes violently from the cold, as a sharp, agonizing sensation threatens to rip his very flesh apart. Feeling that raw agony, you can't help but wonder whose pain he's actually feeling. As the assimilation rate hits just 1%, Giovanni is suffering. Catching a brief glimpse of him in the dark, Gio insists he can endure this and that everything is fine. Suddenly, Gio gets a quick flashback of Giovanni sitting peacefully on the sandy shore of his old home. He's warmly welcoming two mysterious figures from the sea, but the memory suddenly warps into a terrifying, grinning monster showing its razor-sharp teeth. telling him nothing is wrong. It hurts. Tears of intense pain and deep grief spill from those bright blue eyes as the tragic vision keeps playing out. Yet, even through that immense torment, the image of the long-haired blonde priest returns, smiling with the most peaceful sweetness. Echoing in Gio's mind, the priest's gentle voice says with absolute certainty that he regrets nothing he did, even as he weeps bitter tears. The man admits that despite the agony of his tragic end, he was incredibly happy during his brief life. Deep night. Far away, under the flickering light of a single street lamp, someone watches the dark. Someone mutters in a serious tone about how terrible this whole situation is. A woman clicking in high heels down a stone hallway cryptically remarks that a bright sun seems to be shining in every single corner. Total darkness. The street lamp suddenly cuts out entirely, leaving the road blanketed under the silent protection of the massive night sky. A beautiful, radiant full moon glows intensely in the clear sky, lighting up the massive buildings of a modern city that never seems to truly sleep. Inside the guild office, fingers heavy with gold rings tap away rapidly and rhythmically on a laptop keyboard. Bisabeol rests a heavy hand on his forehead with a mischievous smirk, clearly cooking up some wild, chaotic plan in his incredibly restless head. He uploads a formal notice to protect Gio and set hard rules for the staff, thinking it is an excellent preemptive strike. Snap. His golden, cat-like eyes lock onto the screen as he closes the laptop, entirely pleased with his little scheme. Near the entrance of the massive guild headquarters, whispers, the staff begins talking about the bizarre notice that was just sent out. Look at that crowd. Groups of hunters and staff are huddling in the corridors, quietly gossiping about the bizarre warning. Two surprised guild members stare at their screens, admitting they have never seen such a bizarre memo in all their years of working inside this place. They wonder if the mysterious cloaked figure in the alert is that same basement ghost from the recent guild rumors. Other hunters scan their screens with deep curiosity, wondering if this cloaked Gio is human. Two girls point out that guild leader Bisabeol never jokes around with official announcements, leaving them completely baffled. One young hunter just laughs it off, telling the others that they should just roll with it instead of trying to make sense of the warning. After all, it is pretty obvious this hooded figure isn't human at all, but the master wants everyone to play dumb and act like everything is normal. Total dread. Just around the corner, a green-haired young assistant silently listens to their chatter, with sheer fear written all over her face. A bulky man in a suit frowns at the notice on his screen while nervous employees keep rushing past him in the halls. A long sigh. Exhausted, he decides to just ignore the whole mystery, realizing that digging into this cloaked figure business will only bring him extra work. Some workers mutter that they would way rather go home, rest, and walk the dog than pull overtime for some weird guild mystery. Meanwhile, two guards figure that Master Bisabeol realized the basement ghost is harmless, so he is keeping it around. Adjusting his sunglasses with a smirk, the on-duty guard warns over his radio that they all need to follow the new rules to avoid any real trouble. His partner gives a solemn nod, quietly agreeing with those orders. They prefer to just accept their master's new orders without asking any hard questions. Honestly, the rest of the office crew is just celebrating that they won't have to deal with the basement ghost during their shifts anymore. But wait, some female curators are still pretty terrified, knowing they will have to look after Gio's portrait when Yu Sung-woon is away. Watching the panicked curators whisper and walk away, the guard with glasses thinks to himself that he should probably buy them dinner to cheer them up. In another room, Yu Sung-woon praises the hired team, telling the boss how incredibly relieved he is that everything got resolved in total peace. Bisabeol just bursts out laughing, amused, confessing how much he loves his employees for hating extra work and not caring about anything at all. He adds that by setting these clear rules to protect Gio from rude behavior, the guild easily avoids any friction or trouble with him. Crossing his arms with a serious expression, Yu Sung-woon agrees that this approach will definitely prevent any internal problems within the guild. Still, because of Gio's massive magical presence, he warns they must pretend the young man is an S-rank hunter to avoid terrifying the public. Leaning back, Bisabeol laughs, and honestly, you can already guess how incredibly wild people will react to this sudden S-rank hunter. Modern hunters, he notes, are treated like absolute idols these days, which means news about this mysterious Gio is going to spread like wildfire. Ignoring his boss's sarcastic tone, Yu Sung-woon stays completely serious, stating he truly believes this massive uproar might actually be for the best. He explains that an entity's danger depends on the rumors surrounding it, so shrinking Gio's myth down to a human scale is much safer. Bisabeol finds this theory fascinating, revealing that to prepare, he already booked an exclusive, high-security hotel tailored for tamer hunters. Flashing a sinister smile, the boss promises he will cover up any little mishaps that might go down telling the curator to just make sure Geo has a fun trip. Yu Sung-woon swallows hard, cold sweat dripping down his face after hearing his boss's insane idea of what counts as a tolerable mess. Since he is the one stuck babysitting Geo, the curator can only pray silently that none of his boss's chaotic fantasies actually come true. The heavy metal elevator doors slide open with a smooth hiss as he finally reaches the isolated, mysterious fifth basement of the guild's gallery. Stepping out into the dark, Yu Sung-woon tightens his black gloves. Realizing he has to pray, Geo chooses to be on his absolute best behavior. Footsteps echo through the empty subterranean gallery as the hunter slowly walks toward the room where Geo's portrait is kept. Entering the lavish room, the curator finds Geo already standing outside his golden frame, wearing his iconic, imposing long black cloak. Yu Sung-woon freezes in his tracks, letting out a soft, confused gasp. Just looking at him is enough to send a cold shiver down your spine. Staring intently at the young painter in the dark cloak, the hunter instantly notices that Geo's entire aura feels quite different from before. Geo calmly asks if he kept him waiting long, but Yu Sung-woon politely shakes his head, replying that he actually just got here early. The curator is stunned to realize that even the boy's tone of voice has completely shifted, sounding completely different from the voice he was normally used to hearing. It is terrifyingly perfect, and even that overwhelming magical pressure from their massive level difference has completely vanished into thin air. Seeing the shock plastered all over the hunter's face, Geo calmly explains that he decided to take a few preventive steps for this trip. Yu Sung-woon echoes the word back, completely and utterly baffled, wondering what kind of crazy magical alteration could alter a being's state like this. But Geo explains he simply tuned his power down to avoid scaring normal humans, proudly noting that his little experiment worked perfectly, judging by the curator's stunned reaction. 2 days after his soul synchronized with the priest, Giovanni, Geo wakes up in bed, chuckling to little Honey that his daddy is doing pretty great. Gently petting Honey's soft, glowing body with one finger, he feels a wave of warmth for this adorable golden creature that refuses to leave his side. Geo thinks about how the system operates, remembering he has to locate a compatible host across dimensions and secure their willing consent. Once that is done, he must clear location quests to slowly boost his soul assimilation rate with the host, finalizing the cycle. Things definitely move faster when Giovanni's righteous personality takes the wheel, but it is not without some serious drawbacks. Without even trying, Geo notices his integration rate spontaneously jump to 4%, flooding his mind with memories he has never seen before. He looks at the painting full of the priest's memories, quietly realizing it feels like he's remembering his own past life. Geo feels all of Giovanni's deep emotions and tragic history slowly blending into his own mind in a completely natural way. He sees that Giovanni was a truly warm soul with this gentle charisma, a natural leader who only wanted peace for his world. Most of all, the ancient priest was just a simple man who deeply cherished daily moments with his loved ones and life's smallest joys. Below the shining portrait of the golden-haired priest, his full baptismal name appears. The name Geo now holds in his soul, Giovanni Botlin. It's pretty bizarre holding two minds at once, but Geo notes that even if the priest's personality slips out occasionally, taking back full control is incredibly easy. He can clearly see that everything is playing out exactly like the system's advice on how to handle compatibility with his own identity. He is suddenly jolted from his thoughts when his stomach lets out an insanely loud, rumbling growl, completely shocking even little Honey. Our young painter realizes this synchronization brings back very human needs like feeling actual hunger, needing sleep, and even having to tidy up his home. Sitting at the kitchen table, enjoying his morning breakfast, Geo smiles with relief, glad that these normal reactions will make him blend in as a regular human. Snap back to the guild basement, where Geo gently asks Yu Sung-woo if they can finally head out now. The surprised curator quickly snaps out of his trance, nodding in a hurry. He points the way forward. As they walk, Yu Sung-woo is still totally reeling from the insane things he just saw down on the 5th basement floor. He suddenly realizes he's been stressing over the wrong things while Geo just strolls behind him, completely relaxed. The hunter notices that to keep his massive aura from crushing everyone, Geo is voluntarily suppressing his entire presence. Thinking that this is basically spiritual self-mutilation, Yu Sung-woo tensely asks if the kid is actually doing okay. Geo answers with a confused yes. As they ride the elevator up, the hunter can't stop worrying about the kid's bizarre habit of giving away priceless gifts. If the wrong people find out about this insane generosity, Geo is going to end up as an incredibly easy target for them. Yu Sung-woo realizes the real danger isn't even about what random actions Geo might pull out on the streets, but how the world itself is going to react to him. They pass the guild entrance, where the guards keep their eyes glued to the kid, closely tracking his exit from the basement. Yu Sung-woo silently admits his biggest error was not prepping for the absolute malice of normal people who might try to push Geo. Staring at the massive, futuristic skyscrapers all around, Geo notes with quiet awe that things in the mortal realm sure do change incredibly fast. He remembers catching a tiny glimpse of the outside from inside his box, realizing how insanely advanced this city has become. Our young painter watches the bustling crowds with pure curiosity, finding the endless stream of people completely unique and diverse. Honestly, this mind-blowing view makes all his anxiety completely melt away, finding it pretty funny, seeing regular people carrying massive swords down the city streets. As they walk, armed hunters passing by on the sidewalk begin throwing suspicious, sideways glances right at them. A winged hunter and his partner with a massive blue sword stop to whisper. Geo realizes that even with his aura suppressed, a kid in a cloak still draws tons of attention, and the curator notes that his suppressed aura still matches a high-level A-rank hunter. To prevent any more trouble, Yu Sung-woo gently pulls the hood of the cloak back over Geo's head, who gladly accepts the cover. The hunter explains they are riding a futuristic floating train to the restaurant, which absolutely blows Geo away with its high-tech design. Hidden beneath his hood, he wonders if the outside world could actually change this much in a span of only 31 years. To pay for their transit fare, Yu Sung-woo reaches out and hands a sleek, glowing personal card right over to Geo. He tells Geo he can use this card to buy absolutely anything he wants, calmly adding that there is absolutely no limit. Geo stares at the shiny card, his hands shaking from pure nerves as he wonders why he was given unlimited money. Still shaking with anxiety, Geo taps the black card right against the turnstile reader, following his friend's quiet direction, and hears a cheerful confirmation chime. Now inside the high-tech train with a beautiful city view, Geo notices the empty cabin and asks if there is some reason for it. As the train chime rings out, Yu Sung-hoon looks up and calmly says it is really nothing very important. The hunter explains that the fare for this transit is actually pretty expensive for any ordinary citizen to pay. This unexpected fact leaves him totally speechless. Geo silently laments how pricey transit is, thinking ironically that capitalism is still very much alive and kicking in this future. Staring at the empty car, the young man silently reflects that social inequality has gotten much worse in this future. Yu Sung-hoon checks his watch, saying it is usually busier, but things change since it is already 8:38 in the morning. He explains that by this hour, workers are already on the job, leaving the transit car looking completely deserted. Speechless at the hour, Geo wonders if he misheard. But the hunter confirms that most companies here actually start their shifts at 7 a.m. Horrified by those brutal hours, Geo thinks that basic human rights have completely vanished here, deciding it is honestly way better living inside his painting than being a total slave to work. Watching the snow fall outside, Yu Sung-hoon warmly changes the subject, asking if he remembers fish-shaped bread, and Geo promises to return the favor, and the hunter explains it is just street food, suggesting they can keep an eye out for a stall on their walk. He goes on listing other street foods like egg bread and octopus balls, but Geo goes dead silent when asked about fish cakes. Slightly insulted, Geo silently grumbles that his friend keeps forgetting he was once a normal human, long before his portrait bound him, but he quickly lets it slide, deeply grateful for the special treatment that landed him an unlimited card, confessing with a watering mouth that he is dying to try those sweets. And here is the catch. Yu Sung-hoon warns him not to expect much, since those stalls got banned for ruining the city's aesthetic. Detailing the strict rules against street vendors and the harsh consequences, he says that province folks face heavy restrictions in the city. Geo finds this information pretty strange, realizing there seems to be a highly rigid and severe social division between city folks and people from the countryside. The hunter uncomfortably confirms that this harsh divide is very real, making Geo ask curiously why there is so much division in the first place. Yu Sung-hoon admits it is a really difficult and complex topic to explain easily, simply explaining that it just comes down to the current harsh social climate. He awkwardly confesses that their society is split into castes, explaining that active hunters and citizens with good capital jobs belong to Class 1. He adds that basically, any hunter ranked B or higher is elite Class 1, assuming they have never committed a major crime. Even those ordinary citizens without big salaries easily belong to Class 2, simply because they live inside the capital. Meanwhile, regular folks living in the provinces farthest from the capital are generally grouped together into the so-called Class 3. There are also the most needy people without records or identities on the borders, who end up implicitly labeled in Class 4. Finally, criminals and fugitives end up in the dreaded Class 5, stripped of human rights and facing immediate death on sight. Honestly, you can't help but feel for Geo as he silently processes how incredibly messed up and sad this whole caste system is. Spotting a beautiful traditional restaurant down below, Geo curiously asks if there is any real reason to divide people to this extreme extent. Yu Sung-hoon explains that defense is the main reason, since nobody knows when or where a dangerous dungeon might suddenly open up. He adds that some monsters that survived the initial cataclysm ended up adapting and establishing permanent territories across the entire Earth. Because of this, massive walls were built at city borders to protect the citizens from these dangerous aerial attacks. Beyond that, the actual building materials for the capital are taken from powerful monsters to withstand almost any enemy assault. There are also guards patrolling constantly, and with so many hunters around, any threat is resolved pretty much instantly. But these security measures are limited, and in the provinces, a single second of carelessness can easily cost you your life. As sliced meat grills on their table, Yu Sung-hoon mentions that he chose this place because they absolutely never serve monster meat. Geo is utterly shocked that people eat monsters, realizing the common sense of this new world is totally upside down. Savoring his meal with his chopsticks, Sao Geo sadly reflects. Life on Earth became incredibly harsh and cruel in just 31 years. Even so, he perks up realizing that traditional bulgogi is still delicious. It is his only comfort in this dystopian world. Walking along the edge of a beautiful canal with crystal clear water, Yu Sung-woo mentions that even though it is winter, the local climate is still quite warm. He reveals the truth. The Department of Urban Landscaping actually used magic on these waters, so the area works like a greenhouse and keeps the plants green. He explains that entry here is free for almost everyone, but Seogeo is soon distracted by a tiny, exotic bird with fluffy white feathers. Yu Sung-woo gently picks up the cotton ball bird, explaining that this little creature is a monster that completely lost its hostility toward humans. Seogeo is shocked. Hearing that such a cute little thing used to be a monster, he realizes some species evolved to live in harmony. The hunter finds it incredibly adorable when several cotton ball birds land amicably on Seogeo's hood, noting that the birds seem to adore him. Yu Sung-woo then invites Seogeo to dip his feet in the warm water, leaving the young man surprised and asking in confusion if that is really allowed. The hunter assures him it is fine because the place is completely empty right now, encouraging Seogeo to sit calmly on the stone edge of the canal. Seogeo gently dips his bare feet into the warm, clear water, immediately feeling an incredibly pleasant and refreshing physical sensation. He quietly realizes that this warm water has a highly unique and strikingly beautiful aroma, completely different, nothing like the odorless water of his past. Flashing a small, satisfied smile beneath his hood, Seogeo remarks that the water is truly beautiful, incredibly clear, deep, and pristine. But as a strangely sweet scent rises from the canal, Yu Sung-woo looks at his companion in shock and calls out in warning. This sweet aroma mirrors the ocean of Giovanni's ruined homeland, and his blonde form and glowing eyes begin manifesting around Seogeo's body. And here's where things take a chilling turn. The water starts to churn, and Seogeo's eyes flash green as Giovanni takes control. The priest's long blonde hair spills out from the dark hood as he gently splashes and plays with the canal water. The hunter calls out to him urgently, but the young man only offers a soft, mysterious smile, fully possessed by Giovanni's mind. Faced with this sudden, chilling transformation, the trembling curator nervously asks if he is still the Seogeo he knows. With ultimate calmness and a sweet, supernatural tone, the entity under the dark hood softly replies that his guess is correct. He shows a peaceful smile. It shines beneath those golden locks, and he says with total confidence that his name is indeed Geo. The curator is left completely frozen in absolute terror, cold sweat dripping down as he senses the immense weight of this new presence. A bit later, the scene shifts as Yu Sung-woo politely hands over the keycard for their luxurious hotel room. He mentions that his room is right next door and plans to meet at 6 in the evening for dinner, and Seogeo calmly agrees. Yu Sung-woo forces a polite smile and says goodbye, telling the young man to get some good rest before closing the heavy wooden door behind him. The second he is inside, the hunter collapses. He falls to his knees, gasping and shaking as pure panic sweeps over him. You can't even blame the guy for panicking. Replaying that canal scene, he is absolutely certain that entity was definitely not human. He remembers that the boy had been introducing himself as Seogeo to everyone at the guild, probably because he knew he was in South Korea. The curator recalls that after noticing that sudden shift in his voice, he deliberately asked him if he was truly Seogeo. Yet, instead of using his full Korean name like before, the golden-haired entity with those glowing eyes made sure to call himself simply Geo. Leaning heavily against the wall, he breathes with great difficulty as he processes the terrifying danger of that sudden realization. He deeply regrets lowering his guard just because Seogio's stats dropped, knowing this creature can never be a regular human like them. Yu Sung-woo realizes in absolute terror that the young man is actually an overwhelming force of nature merely wearing a human mask. He collapses face down onto his hotel bed. The hunter silently admits to himself just how terrifying this entire situation really is. While the poor hunter is having a panic attack next door, the focus shifts over to the young painter in his own room. Completely unaware of the chaos, Seogio stares in awe at the massive city view from the 45th floor window. As little honey grumbles, Seogio cradles the creature in his palm and says he is happy too, only wishing he could feed it after smuggling it in his suitcase. He flops onto his back across the comfortable bed. Gio cracks a joke about making some sweet candied treats when they get back to their forest cabin. Yu Sung-woon just tries to stay calm. He reasons Gio does not do it out of malice. Maybe the boy just wants to look normal and kind. Staring down at his wristwatch, the hunter lets out a tense sigh. He prays with all his heart that this trip ends without any more scares. But right as he makes that silent prayer, Gio reacts to the nearby canal water again, triggering Giovanni's sleeping soul to wake up once more. Yu Sung-woon frantically yells out Gio's name, making the pilot of the fast speedboat look back in total shock. The hunter quickly grabs Gio with all his strength, stopping the kid from falling or throwing himself into the rough waves trailing the boat. Out of breath, he warns Gio that his sudden movement almost gave the poor pilot a heart attack, while the young man just stares. Absolute calm. Gio politely apologizes to the pilot, explaining that he had never seen this kind of canal before and just got too curious. Yu Sung-woon complains that pretending to jump off a moving boat is incredibly dangerous, even as Gio casually mentions that the place smells like the sea. Yu Sung-woon sighs, admitting he only yelled because he was genuinely worried, and Gio gives him a gentle thank you for understanding. Watching the kid with deep apprehension, the hunter stays highly alert for any sign that Giovanni has taken full control. Breaking the silence, he asks Gio if he happens to really like the ocean, catching the young man completely off guard with the question. The hunter explains. Back then, the rise of sea monsters caused global water levels to spike, forcing humanity to build canals to direct the flow. Thinking back to Gio's reaction at the last canal, Yu Sung-woon says he just wondered if Gio has a special attachment to the smell of the ocean. Gio pauses, calm and serene, and simply replies that he actually does not have any special preference. But then, Gio trails off for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly under the deep shadow of his protective hood. Actually, he adds, I think I do like it, because the sleeping soul of Giovanni inside him seems to really love that salty sea breeze. A massive sweat drop forms on the hunter's head. What kind of confusing yes and no answer is that supposed to be? Then, completely out of nowhere, Gio asks the wildest question: do mermaids actually exist in this modern world? Yu Sung-woon gets suspicious, noting that Gio used the words here too. Why would the kid suddenly bring up mythical mermaids? The hunter explains that while actual sea monsters show up, some mystical entities do take on the forms of those ancient legends. He explains that in their current world, ancient idol worship, folklore, and religious myths have gained incredible power. The intense, collective belief of humanity literally breathes life into these old legends, materializing them into physical reality. Gio listens with deadly seriousness as he remembers the tragic things Giovanni told him about his own lost world. The cloaked boy reflects on the priest's words, how their entire planet had withered away, transforming into a dungeon bound by rigid rules. He envisions the unfinished quest left by Giovanni, contacting the sun god to finally bring closure to the tragic story of the Little Mermaid. The pilot's voice snaps him out of his thoughts, politely announcing that they have finally reached their destination. Gio is amazed. The restaurant is built right inside a deactivated fixed dungeon shaped like a massive seashell. Once they sit down, Gio asks what a fixed dungeon even is, making the hunter realize the kid knows nothing about the different types. Yu Sung-woon explains they are divided into fixed and mobile, as well as virtual or gateway dungeons. Virtual dungeons do not have physical walls, they just trigger out of nowhere when a person meets very specific conditions. Gio thinks that's completely unfair, and honestly, same, saying how terrifying it must be to get sucked into a dungeon just for visiting a shop. The hunter agrees, explaining that because they are rare and almost impossible to detect, these are what people fear the absolute most. Pointing his fork toward the restaurant's high ceiling, he explains that fixed dungeons actually created incredible, permanent magical structures across the earth. For instance, this giant seashell was once a culinary dungeon, cleared when an ordinary cook made a dish that pleased the dungeon's master. Gio finds the conquest story incredibly beautiful and moving, absolutely fascinated by the chef's happy ending. Yu Sung-woon explains that the cook awakened a special chef class, Geo is blown away to hear that the old man is still cooking at 92. The hunter says high-level awakeners of C rank and above age much slower, which is why the old chef still looks like he is only 50. Geo tries pretty hard not to let this crazy world surprise him anymore, but it still breaks his heart seeing elderly folks forced to work at such an old age. Yu Sung-hoon explains that when another dimension zone overwrites Earth and stays behind without its rules after being cleared, it becomes a village dungeon. He explains those dungeons act like portals to video game-like dimensions, and Geo finally understands how the whole system works. Watching his quiet table companion, Yu Sung-hoon smiles warmly and asks if the food was good, and Geo replies with pure satisfaction that the wonderful meal reminded him of the happy times he shared eating with his own disciples. Seeing such a warm and nostalgic reaction from the mysterious robed young man, Yu Sung-hoon simply rests his cheek on his hand and smiles in silence. The hunter says he is glad he liked it, but secretly worries, hoping Geo will be more careful to hide the fact that he is just imitating a human. Knowing humans are very social, he decides to wrap things up quickly, suggesting Gyeongbokgung Palace as their next tour stop in Seoul. Hearing that landmark's name makes Geo go quiet for a moment, reflecting deeply on the history of that place. He remembers his past life as a simple teacher, when he used to bring his excited young students to this exact spot for school field trips all the time. He wonders if those kids are still doing okay in this chaotic new world, but shakes it off and says he is excited to visit. A quick flashback reveals that even as a little kid, the hooded boy could see bizarre things, even when his friend insisted absolutely nobody was standing there. The boy points straight ahead, asking his friend if he seriously cannot see what is right there, but his friend just shrugs, asking if he is seeing a monster or something. The boy tries to explain it is not a monster, but quickly backs down and apologizes, claiming he made a mistake. In reality, a terrifyingly massive dark shadow made of pitch-black smoke and glowing eyes was looming right before the scared boy's face. He reveals in his thoughts that some of those bizarre apparitions actually had physical features that looked almost identical to regular people walking the streets. But one thing was certain: those mysterious entities were nothing like ordinary animals or regular plants. Then one day, people on the street started gossiping about a neighbor's house mysteriously catching fire, wiping out the entire family in a tragic disaster. He realized these dangerous entities always brought disaster, noting that a creepy, dark creature had been closely stalking an elderly lady for the past few days. Even though he had absolutely no clue how these monsters caused people to die, he could clearly see the pitch-black entity walking right behind the poor old lady on the street. He could not feel any active malice coming from them, but he knew their mere presence was a highly dangerous threat to ordinary humans. Figuring they would not attack without reason, the kid decided that as long as he did not provoke them and kept pretending to be blind to them, he would be totally fine. Now, a freezing winter night blankets the massive, glowing city as light snow starts drifting down between towering modern skyscrapers. Near a warm grate, a tiny, glowing yellow bird chirps softly, its stomach growling in hunger, while the colorful gems on its chest shine bright. Suddenly, a street vendor with strange yellow glowing eyes under his low hat notices the little beast, realizing it had been hiding in that spot the entire time. Meet Cha Yun-hyuk, a simple pastry vendor who works hard to support his F-rank hunter sister, Cha Ah-ra, and his little brother, Cha Yi-sol, who awakened as a cleric. As a Class 5 citizen, he grinds daily to keep his family afloat, until a mysterious, dark-hooded customer suddenly stops by and asks how much for a bag of treats. Hearing the creepy voice of this entity leaves Cha Yun-hyuk completely frozen and utterly speechless, realizing with absolute dread that this terrifying monster just spoke directly to him. Terrified to see a monster mimicking a human so flawlessly, he stammers out in pure fear that a 10-piece bag of the pastries costs 5,000 won. The hooded figure asks if he takes cards, and the terrified vendor stutters that while he prefers cash, he can accept card payments. The robed stranger pulls a shiny gold card from his pocket, politely requesting a fresh bag of the warm pastries, while the little bird peeks out, leaving the seller wondering if saying no to this monster would get him killed. Cha Yun-hyuk nervously mentions he is closing up and needs to make a fresh batch, but the visitor patiently agrees to wait. He runs the fancy gold card through his card reader, completely stunned when the transaction actually goes through without a single issue. As Cha Yun-hyuk flips fish-shaped pastries on the hot griddle, he wonders if Geo actually swiped his card, but doubts a literal monster would ever act like that. Seeing that Geo is carrying a highly unusual glowing bird, Cha Yun-hyuk begins to suspect that he might just be a very powerful beast tamer hunter. Still, he can feel that this cloaked Geo is radiating the exact same chilling energy as those ghostly apparitions, with a massive focus centering directly on Mel. To Cha Yun-hyuk, The small bird Mel radiates such an overwhelmingly dangerous aura that Mel's cute look has to be some sort of disguise for a total monster. Shaking with pure anxiety, Cha Yun-hyuk finally reaches out and hands over the paper bag packed with fresh, warm pastries to Geo. The mysterious, robed Geo politely thanks him for the hot snack, telling Cha Yun-hyuk that he has brought along a highly valuable gift to show his appreciation. Cha Yun-hyuk is left completely clueless, watching Geo place something incredibly shiny on the counter while offering an apology for causing him any unnecessary fright. Geo drops a massive, shimmering, precious gemstone right onto the stand's counter, begging Cha Yun-hyuk to accept it as a humble apology for the delay. Cha Yun-hyuk stammers that such a valuable item is entirely unnecessary, but the hooded Geo simply slips away into the night. The mysterious, hooded Geo walks calmly down the empty, quiet sidewalk as light snowflakes begin to fall softly around him. The empty street quickly falls into deep silence again, leaving only that one glowing pastry stand in the freezing Seoul winter. Terrified, Cha Yun-hyuk crouches, shaking behind his counter. He buries his face in his hands, weeping from the sheer relief of surviving that terrifying encounter. Ever since he started seeing those invisible monsters, he knew deep down that he was destined for a bizarre, lonely end that nobody would ever understand. Tension, pure tension. His racing heart hammers against his chest. Through heavy tears, Cha Yun-hyuk confesses that he truly believed his time was up. Still hiding, Cha Yun-hyuk desperately tries to calm his rapid pulse and recover from that absolute nightmare. Gradually, his racing heart begins to quiet down, and he blinks in shock, realizing his body is somehow perfectly fine. He remembers that gigantic and terrifying creature opening its massive jaws to take a direct bite right out of his skull, leaving him utterly paralyzed. Cha Yun-hyuk clearly felt those giant fangs pressing into his skull, making it insanely weird that the attack left absolutely no wound behind. Deeply intrigued, Cha Yun-hyuk gets thoughtful. Honestly, how on earth did he walk away completely unscathed after getting his head chomped like that? Suddenly, a brilliant light flashes, and the little yellow bird Mel begins fluttering cheerfully through the freezing night air. Mel soars up into the dark city sky, vanishing completely, and leaving behind a glittering trail in the falling snow. Staring up at the dark winter sky in silence, Cha Yun-hyuk makes a firm decision that tomorrow he will definitely set up his pastry stand in a completely different neighborhood. Morning light soon breaks over the massive, busy capital city, signaling the start of another hectic, routine workday. Yoo Sung-woon walks up to the stand alongside Geo, ordering a hot bag of pastries from the familiar vendor he easily recognizes. Total horror. Cha Yun-hyuk looks up and spots the dark-robed customer again. What a painfully small world. Yoo Sung-woon remarks that it has been a while, so Cha Yun-hyuk explains he relocates to dodge city inspectors, silently wondering if the guy is actually a hunter. Right then, Yoo Sung-woon looks over at Geo in absolute surprise, asking point-blank if Geo is actually a beast tamer. Geo gives Cha Yun-hyuk a polite bow, offering his sincere thanks for the incredible help he provided earlier that morning. Yoo Sung-woon is totally baffled and asks if Geo went out at dawn. Geo explains that Mel had gone missing, while Yoo Sung-woon complains about not getting a heads up. Geo says he found Mel fast, while Cha Yun-hyuk sweats in panic. He is absolutely convinced that Geo is some terrifying monster controlled by a high-ranking hunter. Yoo Sung-woon tries to smooth things over by assuring him that Geo is indeed a beast tamer, but asks if some bizarre incident happened between them earlier. Tearing up, Cha Yun-hyuk nods and begins explaining that right after Geo purchased those hot pastries last night, a truly bizarre incident went down. He explains in absolute terror that the small bird Mel suddenly grew to a monstrous size and ended up taking 2 massive bites right on his head. Hearing this shocking accusation about his little pet's behavior, Geo becomes visibly embarrassed and completely speechless. Yoo Sung-woon turns around with an incredibly annoyed glare, demanding Geo explain what he has to say for himself after an accusation like that. Geo lowers his head sincerely. He offers a deep apology for what happened, asking with genuine concern if the worker got hurt from that. The vendor Yun-hyuk tries to reassure him, saying it did not hurt and felt like a harmless prank, but Geo still insists on apologizing for his child's behavior. Yoo Sung-woon is stunned hearing him call the bird his child, while Geo offers to check Yun-hyuk's head, revealing he is a professional doctor. Our hunter stands in complete shock, his eyes widening at the robed young man's claim, totally unable to believe what he just heard. He remembers that Geo possesses the memories of a 29-year-old, but never imagined that this former art teacher could actually be a doctor. Wearing an extremely serene and welcoming smile beneath his golden locks, the mysterious entity asks for permission to step closer, reaching out toward the young man. Yoonhyuk stands still, blushing slightly as the young man's warm, gentle hands delicately touch the sides of his head to examine him. But hold on, things are about to get weird. A mysterious woman in high heels struts in, leaving trails of magical chains. The mermaid-like woman stares down a dark, dead-end alley, complaining that the trail she was following suddenly vanished right here. She strokes her face thoughtfully, wondering if someone managed to remove the tracker spell she carefully placed in that strategic location. She notes that not even the Sun Temple knows how the priest vanished, because there are absolutely no signs of a struggle or escape in the alley where it all took place. With a cruel, sinister smile on her face, the mermaid reveals their grand scheme was to completely sabotage the upcoming, highly important Sun Festival celebration. But she deeply regrets that the key person needed to pull off this sabotage has vanished without a single trace. She turns to a young, pointed-eared boy named Iser, telling him that she will need his direct help to move the plan forward now. Holding a firm, resolute gaze, young Iser replies seriously that he will do his absolute best and will never disappoint her high expectations. The mermaid lets out a creepy laugh, cynically telling him not to be so tense because they are just here to have some fun. Silence returns to the dark alley under the gray sky, hiding the secrets of this dangerous conspiracy. Meanwhile, back at the pastry stand, a soft, revitalizing golden light emanates from Yoonhyuk's head, making him comment in surprise that his forehead suddenly feels very warm. The blonde priest smiles sweetly, explaining there was a minor scratch right there, so he decided to purify the area to keep him from catching any nasty illness. The vendor Yoonhyuk runs his hand over his hair, utterly amazed to find the pain and the scratch are completely gone. Yoo Sung-woon stands frozen, cold sweat dripping. Real talk, you can tell he knows something absolutely crazy just happened here. The hunter wonders in disbelief how this man can use holy magic, questioning if he will ever uncover Seojio's mysterious true identity. Yoonhyuk breaks into a huge, enthusiastic smile, asking if he mistook him for a monster simply because he looks like a strong hunter. Reasoning that monsters never use holy magic, he concludes Seojio is a skilled devotee, wondering why he does not work as a cleric. We see a happy memory of his young little brother smiling joyfully while tightly clutching his holy church prayer book. While getting back to making his pastries, Yoonhyuk asks if they plan to attend the important Sun Cult initiation ceremony happening soon. Yoo Sung-woon asks if it is already time for the temple event, and Yoonhyuk confirms that these initiation ceremonies always happen midwinter. He proudly reveals his younger brother is a cleric taking part in the ritual, adding how happy he was to be reminded of him by seeing another highly devoted believer. Yoo Sung-woon comments with a knowing smile, saying he heard it is much easier to catch a god's eye when a massive crowd gathers in one place. Yoonhyuk nods, admitting he is slightly worried about his little brother's future if he fails to get chosen by a deity during the initiation ceremony. Yoo Sung-woon assures him the cleric boy should easily secure a good, administrative role at the temple, and Yoonhyuk hopes for the best while inviting them to come watch the grand event. Yoo Sung-woon accepts and suggests he set up his pastry stand near the guild, while Seojio politely bows to say goodbye to the street vendor. Walking down the street, Yoo Sung-woon asks if anything major happened last night, and Seojio calmly replies that Mel swears he is completely innocent. Yoo Sung-woon wonders if an origin being's innocence matches a human's, but decides to take his word for it as the little bird chirps in response. The hunter slides the gold card into the reader and asks directly if Geo plans to head back inside the painting world today. Geo nods and says the outside world is pretty fun and full of new experiences, though his tone suddenly dips into a soft, melancholy quiet. Looking closely at his forest cabin painting, he honestly admits to himself that this modern human world just isn't where he truly belongs. But the hooded youth realizes this harsh modern reality is far too dangerous for a fragile, painted soul like him to survive completely intact. He grips his paper bag of warm, fresh pastries tightly, and in his mind, Geo confesses he is honestly pretty terrified of this place. Sung-woon completely gets it, knowing how gentle Geo is. Leaving the canvas and constantly burning through his own essence must take a massive toll on him. He says he is glad Geo had fun, promising to call when the ceremony starts, and suggests the young man rest up inside his painting. So, after a brief stroll through the hectic streets of Seoul, our young painter finally retreats to his safe gallery canvas, resting comfortably on his wooden bed inside the forest cabin. The dark-robed young man drifts off, sleeping a full day because he feels the world outside his covers is simply too dangerous. Waking up and stretching in his warm bed, a system pop-up reveals his soul's assimilation rate, with Priest Giovanni has almost reached 15%. Cradling his cute yellow bird, Geo silently reminds himself that his synchronization with the former cleric Giovanni is moving along right on schedule. But get this, his synchronization actually slows way down inside the safety of his canvas, compared to when he first touched that water out in the real world. Gio figures this slowdown must be a special feature of his canvas, a distinct difference he only picked up on after exploring the real world. The boy, he rolls onto his side, wondering if the magic behaves differently because he is treated as a piece of art inside this place, rather than a human. Silent and majestic, the golden portrait of the dark-robed young man hangs quietly in the high-security room, keeping all of his deep secrets safe. Suddenly, he leaps out of bed, praising his own work with huge pride while his little bird companion lets out a couple of happy, cute chirps. Gio suggests they go visit the old man, deciding to pack a massive stack of fresh sandwiches for their little journey, carefully keeping track of all the pending quests he still needs to complete. He packs up a cute picnic basket with a bunch of fresh, delicious-looking sandwiches, making sure they have plenty of good food for their long walk. Stepping barefoot across the cabin's wooden floor, the young artist moves toward one of his massive canvases to cross the threshold into a whole new world. The dark-robed artist heads into his quiet forest studio, where countless half-finished paintings and raw landscape sketches are scattered all over the place. With Giovanni taking control of Gio's body, he carries the picnic boxes over to a deep ocean painting, politely asking the canvas for permission to step inside. The very second he steps close, the rough sea on the canvas bursts into an intense golden glow, opening a magical dimensional portal right before his eyes. Whispering his thanks, the robed boy steps straight through the glowing light, diving deep into the dark blue water as bubbles rush past him. Way down in the dark, mysterious ocean, a beautiful silhouette with long dark hair rests on a giant rock, cradled by deep-sea currents. The golden-haired boy arrives at the submerged temple, quickly apologizing for being late, quietly explaining that he had stepped out for a while to explore the modern human world. A brilliant, sun-like sphere of golden light blazes at the bottom of the sea, flooding the entire ancient temple with a pure, divine glow. Giovanni sits down calmly on a massive rock and opens his lunch basket, bathed in the warm rays of that immense, sacred energy. Wearing a soft smile, he notes that he can breathe perfectly fine down here in the deep sea, while his tiny yellow bird perches comfortably on his head. Is it because he is technically deceased in this dimension, or because his painted nature makes him completely immune to the standard laws of this watery world? Deep down, he realizes he feels just as incredibly free and unburdened here as he did while walking through the peaceful forest inside his cabin canvas. Suddenly, a tiny, curious face made of pure light suddenly appears right before him in the deep, crystal-clear ocean water. As he looks at the cute little glowing face, our kind blonde priest simply offers an incredibly warm, welcoming smile in return, and his sandwiches float safe inside a magical air bubble. Giovanni mournfully laments, feeling as though he has completely lost his beloved homeland. He uses a divine sun miracle to create protective air bubbles around the food, laughing joyfully while mentioning those delicious sandwiches must not get wet. He wishes the sun god a great meal, successfully completing his holy quest to make direct contact with the deity through that very special lunch. Elsewhere, the stylish guildmaster of collectors, Bisabeol, enters, claps his hands cheerfully, asking if that mysterious young man Seojeo really has a completely different personality. Yu Sung-woo sighs deeply in total exhaustion and complains to his boss, asking why he was summoned so urgently when his detailed report was already coming soon. The hunter explains he does not just watch Seogeo's painting, revealing the sea has been extremely rough lately, which is why he gets constant calls. Upon hearing that sudden complaint about the recent maritime unrest, Bisabeol rests his hands, repeating the word sea with a pretty intrigued and highly suspicious look on his face. Yu Sung-woo details that the activities of origin-born creatures located near the coastal region of the ocean have been quite anomalous and bizarre over the past few days. The gray-haired hunter warns with total seriousness that a massive, dangerous incident or active dungeon outbreak could happen in the sea at any moment. Bisabeol flashes a cynical smile, stating without a single worry that ocean troubles are completely outside his responsibility and do not interest him at all. Yu Sung-woo looks completely discouraged, having already expected this selfish response from his boss, who only asks with a chuckle if his reaction was not totally obvious. Instead, the guild leader celebrates that an origin being returned entirely intact from a simple urban stroll, while also showing off a brand new and deeply fascinating side of his personality. Bisabeol says he could not just sit around waiting for a report after hearing all that, while Yu Sung-woo silently notes that this is exactly why Seojeo always avoids him. Meanwhile, deep down on the seabed, Giovanni holds up his fishing rod and realizes with deep disappointment that catching fish has become pretty tough since everything is fully submerged. He quietly admits he would love to fry some fish for dinner, but since he cannot swim, Catching them alone here is almost impossible. The sun god's little light asks curiously if he is talking about the little bird Mel, wondering if such a cute creature can actually hunt. Mel shakes his head cutely, refusing the idea. But look closer, Yu Sungwoo returns with an interesting theory on Seogyeo's strange behavior. He theorizes that ever since Seogyeo lowered his level to walk the city streets, he started acting like a totally different being. Bisabeol is genuinely astonished, asking if he really lowered his level to match a mere ordinary human, which Yu Sungwoo confirms is incredibly shocking. Showing a sly smile, the guildmaster finds this distasteful, seeing how casually the proto severs his own essence just to blend in as a regular person. Yu Sungwoo comments that the more time Seogyeo spent outside, the more tired he seemed, though he did not notice any major health issues. He adds that even though Seogyeo was incredibly polite and had an overwhelming presence, he did not seem arrogant like he did before, instead identifying himself as a pretty regular 29-year-old human. Yet, he still observed and praised the guild hunters as if he were looking down at tiny ants. Yu Sungwoo recalls he handed out sweets or valuable gems, acting exactly like a superior being bestowing gifts upon his lowly subordinates. However, he details that the level-lowered Seogyeo radiated none of that pride, seeming to act genuinely like a real, ordinary person. To make matters worse, the moment that robed young man came into direct contact with water, he stopped acting like the 29-year-old Seogyeo he claimed to be. He shifted completely in physical form, using powerful holy purification magic as easily and naturally as the simple act of breathing. Yu Sungwoo admits he felt as though his personality had swapped entirely, even while the youth kept identifying himself solely as Seogyeo. Let's jump back down to the deep ocean. Mel returns chirping loudly with a beak full of fish, making Giovanni ask in surprise if the little bird wants him to close his eyes. Giovanni pets Mel with a smile, saying he loves him regardless of his form, and that he already knew of his potential since hearing about the bite on the vendor. The little yellow bird wears an extremely proud expression and chirps softly, showing off his immense determination at his father's words. Giovanni finds it adorable that Mel hides his hunting style and cheerfully calls the sun god to admire how cute his little feathered grandchild is. He decides to cover his eyes with both hands, announcing he will keep them tight shut so the little bird can hunt freely. He asks to be called when it is finished. While he stands there blindfolded, a massive, terrifying black shadow beast with razor-sharp teeth silently rises from the deep to devour the fish. Inside the Grand Guild, Yu Sungwoon explains that the name Geo was never chosen by a human. It was actually a title assigned by Origin itself. He points out that all hunter powers come directly from Origin, which is why the system tagged that exact painting with the name Geo. Bisabeol notes that it is a name no regular human could ever change or sweep aside. He adds that their complete inability to inspect any deeper details proves with absolute certainty that the supreme power of Origin locked the database, strictly declaring those secret details off-limits. Soon, the little bird flies back, clutching an insane pile of fresh fish in its talons. Opening his eyes with a bright smile, the cleric happily remarks on how amazing its help is. Bisabeol looks dead serious as he reflects on how this matches ancient divine legends, openly wondering if Geo might actually be some kind of god. Seriously, think about that for a second. This robed kid might be a transcendent entity that regular humans on Earth have no hope of understanding, let alone labeling. Happily carrying their massive haul of fresh fish, Giovanni cheerfully invites the sun god to head back to the cabin and feast together. Right then, inside the guild meeting room, Yu Sungwoon speaks up firmly, warning that no matter who Geo really is, building a myth around a living, breathing entity who behaves like him is incredibly dangerous and highly concerning. The veteran hunter warns that Geo is the specific type of absolute powerhouse who, with enough blind worship from outsiders, could easily transform into a literal global catastrophe. Totally oblivious to the massive panic of the hunters, the gentle, golden-haired cleric simply smiles peacefully while devouring his delicious fish. Bisabeol shrugs, calmly pointing out that these are still just wild theories, even if he agrees that Geo is someone who falls completely off the charts. Sinking tiredly into his chair, Yu Sungwoon solemnly declares that he's going to monitor every single shift in the behavior of Geo with absolute, maximum caution. He points out that even though the dark-robed painter genuinely thinks he is just a normal guy, his actions are completely otherworldly. It is honestly terrifying how incredibly relaxed and easygoing Geo is, especially for an entity whose raw power could easily wipe out all of humanity. But back at the cabin, the little gold bird happily nibbles on some crispy fried fish, the magical gems on its chest glowing softly. Deep in thought, The white-haired hunter remains convinced that no normal human on this planet could wield such an absurd level of power. He worries that asking too many questions about the strange, shifting spirits that possess the body of the young man during operations might go horribly wrong. It could easily trigger a severe identity crisis, even as Gio calmly stands in the kitchen cooking up another meal. He dreads the painter losing his mind upon, realizing what he actually is. Right then, Gio happily calls out that the crispy fish is ready to eat. The living stuffed bear plops down at the table, letting out an excited little chirp. He can see that Gio used a brilliant sun miracle to make the food extra crispy. Gio happily digs in with his chopsticks, sitting peacefully beside the little bear and Mel, his loyal bird, enjoying a rare moment of quiet in his cabin. Loving the fresh taste, Gio suggests harvesting some crisp greens from his tiny garden patch for their next dinner feast. His two magical pets chirp back in happy approval. Back in the guild room, Bisabeol brings up the hunter license of Gio, agreeing that keeping the boy feeling human is absolutely critical for the planet. Pocketing his hands, the guild chief curiously asks if that tiny bird of his was truly brought to life from a flat canvas sketch. Yu Sung-woon confirms that Gio literally pulled the pet straight out of a drawing, though he adds that nothing chaotic happened out in public. Bisabeol interrupts him with a rather mischievous grin on his face, explaining that he is actually fascinated by how easily Gio manifests gourmet food, rare jewels, and living beasts out of absolutely nothing. The guild leader grows quiet, deeply wondering what kind of madness would unfold if the dark-robed painter decided to sketch an entire landscape. While those guild geniuses keep stressing out, let's check the forest cabin. The little stuffed bear is sound asleep on the wooden floor. The next morning, Gio walks out wearing a rustic straw hat, with Mel perched on his head. But the look on the face of the painter is absolute, jaw-dropping shock. He stares in sheer horror at his crops. His tomatoes and corn have ballooned to an absurd, colossal size, making him question what happened to his yard. Gio is utterly baffled, wondering where his small, cute cherry tomatoes and simple peas went. He stands there, asking how his tiny garden suddenly mutated into a full-blown Amazon rainforest. He's pretty certain Yu Sung-moon didn't give him any weird seeds, so could this bizarre, colossal growth actually be the painting's magic at work? Suddenly, the dark-robed young painter spots something weird in the dense brush. He squints to investigate, gently parting a giant banana leaf. Look at this, a fresh pool of blood is trickling onto the wet soil. Gio takes a few more steps. There, in the thick brush, lies a massive, lifeless deer right in the middle of the thick woods, pointing to a pretty mysterious, bloody event in this spot.